All right, good evening, everyone. I've got 6:31. Mayor Tome here to call this Columbus Common Council regular meeting to order for Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. Pat, if you could please take a roll call for us.
Adams,
Present.
Gray,
Present.
McCabe is excused, Piperone,
Present.
Reed,
Here.
Ryan, here, Tome.
Here, thank you. If able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. This meeting has been noticed in accordance with state statutes and local ordinances. Next item is to approve the agenda for the evening. Unless there's any alterations or deletions, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
Alder Piper will make a motion to approve the agenda.
Adams seconds.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Agenda is approved. Move on to number 5, correspondence and communications. We have 3 people signed up in person this evening. I'll take those first. The first person we have is Keith Peterson. Keith, if you could please approach the podium over there. The microphone is already on for you. Just state your name and address, please.
Keith Peterson, 123 Summit Court.
Go right ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm here with respect to a snow removal issue, and I've sent a letter to Trina and to Paul. I'm the president of the Condo Association, and for a number of years, we had a snow plow guy come in, plow the driveways, push the snow off to the side. Problem we have is we have 26 driveways on Summit Court, and then there's landscape gardens in between. And sometimes you run out of room, and then guy has to push it off and then bring in a skid steer with a bucket, adds more expense, and then pile up the snow. But I'm guessing 6-7 years ago, someone worked out with the city that we could pull the snow into the street, and then we would plow Summit Court at our expense. And there's a cul-de-sac at the end, and pile up the snow there. So that's been going on for 6-7 years or whatever the case is. But one of the disadvantages before is, like I said, we'd run out of room, and the guys with the plow would push it into the lawns, but they would dig up the lawns, would have landscaping expenses in the spring, so that was an issue. But another issue, we've got 28 owners, and I think there's 2, maybe 3 that work. All the rest of us are gray hair and retired. So the driveways get plowed in by the city. And I'd say we probably got 10 or 15 people over 70 years old. So they're not going to get out there and plow out their driveways. So the advantage of us pulling the snow into the street, plowing Summit Court, is we don't have the city coming through and plowing in the driveways, which would add additional expense for us. So what we're asking, I think, I was told when Zach left, he left a note that the city might be able to save a few dollars if they plowed Summit Court and didn't remove all the snow. But half of the snow is from the street anyways. The other half is from the driveways. So I'm not sure that's going to save that much money. And another issue is I had someone say, we don't think this is a good time for the city to be adding expenses to Summit Court because I know my assessment went up $47,000. I think everyone's went up at least in that area $4,500. You know, and of the 28 people, we have 1 kid in school. So we're not overburdening the school system. So those are just some things to take into consideration. So So we're just asking that what we've had in place for 6, 7 years or whatever it is, stay in place. Allow us, and Bill is Klutzman is our guy that does the snow removal. Does an excellent job, and he's here for technical support or whatever. He can answer any questions, but that's the sum total of it. We're just asking if we can keep in place what we've had in place for a number of years.
Okay, we do have that on the agenda for the committee of the whole meeting, which follows this meeting this evening.
Oh, was I supposed to talk this much?
I haven't put a timer on, but
Oh,
I
okay.
think it's under
Well,
3 minutes.
Okay. Well,
Thank
save me
you.
time next time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, up next, we have Alan Strohschein. Al, if you could just state your name and address.
Alan Strohschein, 620 Park Avenue, Columbus. First of all, I'd like to compliment the poll workers. I voted today. They did an excellent job. Pat, your workers did a very fine job. I'm here on behalf of the George Hasey Popcorn Wagon. We didn't get on the agenda for tonight's meeting, but the popcorn wagon needs to be relocated from 128 West James Street, which is the workshop. The CDDC owns that building. It's now going to be for sale. I'm proposing that we work with the city on moving it out to the former Countryside Auto dealership on West James Street, put it near or next to the antique fire truck that is there from the Columbus Fire Department. I talked to Randy Keene, the fire chief. He has no problem with that. I also talked with Nathan Roberts, who I believe subleases that building for some of his private enterprise, and he has no problem with it. So I just want to bring this to the attention of the city tonight so that we can work on this. Snow is hitting northern Wisconsin. It's not far from hitting southern Wisconsin. We really need to get that wagon moved before snow hits Columbus. And I will be talking more about our plans for moving that wagon out near the pavilion too, but not tonight. I don't know if anybody can direct me who I should be continuing the discussion with. Is it Kyle or is it Matt or?
Probably Kyle.
Talk to Kyle. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, up next, we have Police Chief Dennis Weiner. I won't make you state your address.
Okay. Good evening. I'm just here real short and sweet to remind the community and remind everyone, Saturday we are participating in the National Drug Take Back Day at Prairie Ridge Health. Normally they're done twice a year, a spring cleanup they call it, and then a fall one. They didn't do the spring one because of COVID. We initially weren't going to do one in the fall. I was recently contacted by Prairie Ridge Health. They wanted to do one. They wanted our participation. We have to be there to collect the meds because they're controlled substances. So I agreed to do that. It's great. It's going to be a no contact drop off. Come to the main entrance. You're going to go right through like the main entrance where the overhang is. Someone's going to be there. They're going to have a container. We're going to hold out. You're going to drop it in. You're going to drive away. And we drop it into a container that we have to seal, and then we turn over to the state on Monday for incineration. So it's from 10 to 12 at Prairie Ridge Health. It's a no contact. Just follow the signs once you come in the main entrance. You're just going to do the loop right under the overhang and around the main entrance. We'll be outside waiting for you. No liquids and no syringes. And also just a reminder that for those that can't make it, we have a drug drop box at the police department, which is accessible 24/7. It's in the front lobby. The chute is actually built into the wall, and then the actual receptacle is on the back side of our main wall, so it's in our secure area. It's accessible 24/7. We do take a lot of drugs out of that box monthly for storage, and then Monday when we take what we've compiled, it'll be from actually the last year since we didn't have the spring drop-off. And they send us, the feds send us boxes, specific ones we put it in, so everyone's are consistent, and they just load it in a big U-Haul and they drive it to Illinois and they contract to have incinerated at no cost to us. And the boxes are probably about like this, and we probably have 40 of them already, so
Wow.
from a year's worth. And then we actually weigh it before we drop it off, and then we give them an amount, and then at the end they announce all the amount they collected, and and whatever. So it's a good program, a good way to get rid of the stuff that you don't need, you're not using, or expired. Great. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, that's all we had for in-person signups this evening. We did have one person notify us in advance that wanted to make a citizen comment via Zoom. That person's name is Adam Pulver. I see Adam on our monitor. Adam, if you'd just like to state your name and address, you can go right ahead.
Thank you. My name is Adam Pulver, 348 Chapin Street. This is my second time making a statement to the City Council. I've been a Columbus resident for 8 years, and I've worked here even longer. I'm speaking today to support Abigail Lowry, who is running to represent us in the State Assembly in the 37th District. She's on the DeForest Village Board, which meets at the same time as the council here, so unfortunately she can't be here tonight. Abigail is a parent of 2 young children and a village trustee in DeForest for over 3 years. Before that, she was a special education teacher and worked in various jobs supporting people with developmental disabilities. She hopes to be an advocate in the state legislature for individuals with disabilities as well as their families. And Abigail is running to provide good representation and responsiveness for the people of the 37th Assembly District because there is a definite void with our current representative. He's been serving for almost 8 years now and lacks the responsiveness, energy, and willingness to listen to what we need and deserve. Abigail's #1 priority as a village trustee has been to listen to residents, address any concerns they may have, and advocate for what they may need. It's time to vote for a change and better representation. She's also running to ensure a good future for her children and our children across the state by making sure the government works for the people, taking action on climate crisis, and supporting quality public education. If elected, Abigail hopes to put her local government experience to work by being a strong advocate for all the communities within the district, including Columbus. I'm going to share her top 4 priorities. These came from conversations with numerous residents across the district, as well as local elected officials. So #1, she's going to fight for a nonpartisan redistricting legislation. Currently, the state legislature redraws the district maps every 10 years after the census, and whichever political party happens to be in power at that time makes sure those new maps benefit their party and their party's incumbents. They draw the maps to create safe seats, which allow their incumbents to get reelected every 2 years, regardless of actual job performance or how well they represent their constituents. These maps need to be drawn in a nonpartisan manner that doesn't rely on voter data to ensure fair maps and better representation. Her second issue is local control. Now, there's a few things like water quality issues that the state does and should oversee, but most times the state legislature has overstepped its bounds and taken away a lot of local control from communities. Abigail would like to be an advocate for returning power and most decision-making back to local communities. #3 is property tax fairness. Currently, big box stores can get away with paying taxes as though they own empty buildings. It's called the dark store loophole. Local property taxpayers often pay the difference between what these big box stores should pay and what they actually pay. Her opponent is not in favor of closing this loophole. She is. And finally, transportation solutions that make sense for District 37 communities, as well as increased state aid for roads. Transportation is a huge issue. People need to get to their jobs, and our economy depends on moving goods around the state and country. Our current state legislature has kicked the can down the road for many years, and we're seeing an unprecedented number of deteriorating roads as a result. Abigail supports looking at alternatives like expanding passenger rail, obviously important to Columbus, and extending mass transit throughout various parts of the state. Roads continue to be important, of course, and she believes the state can and should help communities in paying for resurfacing and maintenance. Abigail told me to share with you her appreciation for your public service. She knows the time and effort you put into it. Please let me know if you have any questions or local issues not addressed with Abigail's current priorities. Now, I'm not with her campaign in any official capacity, but I will be sure to pass it on. She wants to make sure she's a strong advocate for all communities within the district, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Pulver. We don't have the ability to ask questions here. There is no back and forth. This is citizen comments, so it's essentially a one-way conversation. So thank you. Just as a note or a matter of policy, since this is political in nature, we would have to afford the same opportunity to Abigail Lowry's opponent. if he wished to take advantage of that as well. We don't have a firm policy for citizen comment of restricting speech, but I know from being on the Cable Commission, we do have some rules about participating in nonpartisan type of candidate forums, et cetera. So when it comes to partisan, we need to be able to provide equal time to all candidates. So, all right, that's it for correspondence and communication for the evening. So we'll move on to the consent agenda. On the consent agenda this evening, we have the Council and Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for September 29th, 2020, special meeting also for October 6th, 2020, and the applications for operators licenses for the terms of July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2022. I did not see names in the packet for operators licenses. Is that correct? There are none. So we'll just have the minutes for the evening. Unless there's any questions on the minutes, take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Adams moves to approve the consent agenda.
Ryan, second.
A motion is second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion on the motion? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Move on to new business item number 1. Consider and approve resolution 23-20 declaring a state of emergency. This was discussed at the last committee of the whole. There is a draft in your packet. From my understanding, the language is very similar to the declaration that was issued in March, with a little bit of added language at the bottom of it reflecting on the financial part of it, that we could not be collecting expenses in arrears, so to speak, that would only be moving forward under this order. Are there any questions about this? I know this is the first time that the council is seeing the actual language on the order. See none. Just in case there is any, I guess, overreaction to the idea of a declaration of emergency just due to current conditions, I do think I'd like to read a little bit of the language out of the resolution so people understand what this in fact does. Whereas the 2019 novel strain of coronavirus known as COVID-19 is a respiratory virus that is extremely contagious and can be fatal, whereas COVID-19 continues to spread throughout the United States and numerous cases and hotspots have been identified in Wisconsin, whereas the President of the United States has declared a national emergency, the Governor of Wisconsin has declared a public health emergency in the state of Wisconsin, the County Government of Columbia County has declared a local state of emergency, and the City of Columbus has previously declared a state of emergency because of the spread of COVID-19, whereas the spread of COVID-19 in the City of Columbus continues to present an imminent threat of a disaster that may impact medical care and other critical systems within the city, whereas a multi-agency, multi-jurisdictional response is necessary to undertake efforts to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Now, therefore, it is hereby resolved that pursuant to Wisconsin State Statutes 323.11, in order to protect the peace, public peace, health and safety, preserve lives and property, economic stability, and ensure cooperation and coordination, a declaration of local state of emergency is imposed for 60 days, subject to further extensions authorized by the City of Columbus Common Council. Be it further resolved that the full allocation of city resources be available to ensure the continuation of core city services in the midst of the pandemic, and to provide whatever is necessary and expedient for the health, safety, welfare of persons and property within the city, which shall include but not be limited to the power to bar, restrict, or remove all unnecessary traffic, both vehicular and pedestrian, from the streets of the city, and to enforce all government orders. Be it further resolved that the City of Columbus Common Council does hereby authorize the city administrator to issue temporary orders to further the purpose of this declaration. If the administrator is not available to issue an order, then the mayor and council president in that order shall be authorized to issue such orders. The orders made pursuant to this emergency declaration shall remain in effect until the next meeting of the Common Council, at which time the order shall be continued, amended, or terminated. Be it further resolved that in anticipation of federal, state relief and reimbursement become available, effective as of the date of this order, all city departments shall track expenses incurred related to new or additional efforts to protect the public and prevent the spread of COVID-19, and other public sector entities are encouraged to do the same. Be it finally resolved that the City of Columbus Common Council does hereby authorize and direct the Mayor of Columbus to execute this resolution immediately. That's the entire language of the order. Are there any questions or concerns before considering the adoption of Resolution 2320, which is a declaration of state of emergency? Seeing none, I'll entertain any action from the council.
Adams moves to adopt or approve Resolution 23-20.
Alder Gray seconds.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 23-20, declaring a state of emergency. Is there any discussion on the motion? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Motion passes. New business item number 2, consider and approve sign for the Eagle Scout project for Butterfly Trails Volunteer Park. This has been discussed at the committee of the whole level for some time. We did get a rendering at the last committee of the whole meeting, and there has been some updates provided in the second proof here, which should have been at your desk this evening.
Yeah,
Hi, Matt.
or I sent it out via email too.
Yep.
I don't see Eric Grates online or in the audience, so I just figured I'd jump in. He sent me this on Monday, late Monday afternoon, and to me it appears basically it addressed everything that council talked about. So I guess I don't think it's necessarily a big deal that he's not here, because I think the rendering was what council wanted from the last meeting. So I just wanted to, I guess, share that nugget. So.
Trina, did you have a question?
Yes. So this is Reed. We were asking about the butterfly trails being larger.
From my perspective,
It is
does
slightly
look larger.
It's slightly. Very, very slightly.
I agree with Trina.
I was really looking for, I mean, not necessarily even 50% bigger, but just a larger.
Go ahead.
Trina, I'm just wondering, is it that Butterfly Trails isn't large enough or Volunteer Park isn't small enough?
Butterfly trails could be larger, and Volunteer Park could be a tiny bit smaller. Or butterfly trails could be larger because there's space.
What would you like to do this evening then? I mean, do you want to, this is basically accepting a donation. I think he's looking for the go-ahead, but would you like to do that with just asking for some contingency or understanding that you would prefer to see the, I don't know what point font that is, I guess, based upon a 24 by 36 inch sign, so I couldn't recommend what the next step in a font is.
Yes, I wouldn't know the exact font size to request, but I would like to approve it with a contingency for a slightly larger size for the top line.
Sure. All right, anything else?
Paul, how do you feel?
That was my first comment as well. I mean, if you look at it closely, I guess you can see it's two different sizes, but it's not very self-evident, and that was my first comment as well, but you addressed it first, so thank you.
Sorry.
So one thing I will note on the proof for approval that we received is the proof that we got the last meeting was marked as first proof. This one's marked as second proof, and it looks like if there's an additional proof required, there's an additional $25 charge, probably for Eric to have that done. So I just wanted to note that. I guess what if I'm hearing you right, Trina, if you've got blank space, maybe just make the font bigger to fill up the blank space.
I wouldn't need it for us to see another proof.
Okay. Okay.
Ian's raising his hand.
Ian?
So, looking at the proof, I would be in favor of just going forward with as it is. If we increase the font size of Butterfly Trails, that doesn't, you have to keep in mind that we'll alter things both vertically and horizontally, and it's going to start really just overwhelming the sign. I think everything is in a good size, everything looks good. I think you took our notes really well from the last meeting. I am in favor of moving forward with this proof.
Yeah, I am also in favor of moving ahead with this proof. I think it's one of those deals where it's, it's such a, it's gonna be a big sign in a small picture. I think it's gonna be one of those deals where when you actually see the final product, you'll be able to notice the difference in size a little bit more. I don't think I would get too nitpicky on it. I think it looks good, and they, again, like Ian said, they listened to all of our ideas last time, so I'd be in favor of moving forward with it, as is.
Trina, go ahead.
Oh, well, I'd be mildly disappointed to leave it as is. It's not a huge deal. But this is going to be something fairly permanent, so something that may or may not incur a $25 charge.
Maybe if we approve the sign tonight, when Matt notifies Eric, that he could just say that there was some conversation to say, if possible, without any additional cost, to see if the font could be slightly increased without creating any scheduling conflicts or anything like that. I'm sure he wants to get this sign installed as soon as possible, and it could be snowing out by the end of the evening, so.
Hopefully not.
All right. Well, and I appreciate him listening to the council last week and turning this around very quickly with the suggested changes. It looks nice. All right, is there anything else? If there's nothing else, I think we should have a motion to accept the Eagle Scout Butterfly project for Butterfly Trails Volunteer Park, which is the sign we have in front of us.
Alder Ray will move to accept the donation of the Eagle Scout project for Butterfly Trails Volunteer Park.
Alder Ryan, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the donation, the sign for the Eagle Scout project for the Butterfly Trails Volunteer Park. Is there any further discussion on the motion? If none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? All right, thank you. Matt, if you could just kind of convey those to Eric. Thank you very much. And thanks for all your work on this too, Matt. All right, we'll move on to new business number 3. Consider approved Dodge County stray animal contract. I did hear that Chief Dennis Weiner wanted to get up and just mention something before we took action on this. Feel free to step up, Dennis.
Good evening again. I just want to point out one thing, looking over this contract versus the previous contracts, is the previous contracts have all had a separate checkbox that the contract is solely for dogs. And that is not the option. The checkboxes aren't even present on this current contract. They're just referred to as stray animals. So I just want to be clear from my department's perspective that we are still just going to handle dogs. Because if not, we get a fair amount of cat calls. And we would be way over to where you're going to want to go up to the highest option if we're going to start handling cats. We get probably 2, 3, 4 a month calls from people. There's this cat that's been hanging around. Can you come pick this cat up? It's been on my back deck the last couple of days. And in the past, with only the dog contract, we've had nowhere to go with them, nothing to do with them. And I just want to make sure that it's understood that we're keeping it the same. It's just not identified in the contract.
Yeah, I do think we understood that when we reviewed it, that, I guess if we have up to, how many animals? 5 domestic stray animals per year, in the event that there were no dogs taken in for the entire year, and on the last day you ran into 5 cats.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's your discretion, but I think it's the understanding that we're not going to move into the cat territory yet.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear because I don't want to tell someone we don't pick up strays. They contact one of you, and then it's not in the contract, we don't take. So I just want to be clear from my operational aspect of what we still do as a department. So
Trina,
I got
did you
it.
have a question?
Oh, just a small question, nothing on the contract per se. I recall that the police department used to often hold dogs for a day, and I remember how there used to be like a small kibble line item in the budgets. wondering if that was still a thing.
What we typically do now, depending on when we pick up the animal, we hold on to it for several hours. A lot of people return home from work and, the dog got out the patio door, or the dog jumped out the window, or, something like that, and they call, they're missing their dog. We actually had one of those tonight. We hang on to them for several hours. We also look at our staffing levels, because we have to drive the animals to Juneau. And if I just have one officer on duty, I'm leaving the city unattended for an hour to an hour and 20 for the drive and for the intake paperwork. So there's no hard answer to that. If we took one in early in the morning, we would probably take it by the end of the day. The Humane Society is open till 7. And if we picked one up, like now, we would probably hold it until morning. We do have some food. We use a crate down at the Parks Garage that they're in, so they do have access to food and water. And then we'd probably take them first thing in the morning.
Thank you.
I do think social media has been a pretty good tool, and then the last couple of years when people do lose a dog, they get it out there, people share it, and I know a lot of those dogs are found sometimes the same day. Just so people understand too, by us signing this contract does not give the ability for a citizen of Columbus to take a dog or a stray animal up there, that the pre-approval needs to come from Dennis, the police department, so that's who's going to be taking the animals up there.
And we've had a few of those every year for the last several years.
Yep.
We'll actually get a call from the Humane Society, well, where was the dog found? Well, in Duffy Road. So it's, not ours, but we have had people from in town take them there, and that's fine.
Okay.
That's great, but, so yeah, I know that the checkbox was X for must require permission, and
Yep.
that's great.
Humane Society must have approval before accepting any animal. That
Yep.
is checked off, yeah.
Yep, that's perfect.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you. So at the committee of the whole level, we agreed on the plan we have gone with the last several years, which is up to 5 domestic stray animals. Animals in excess of 5 will be charged $250 per animal over that number, and then that the Humane Society must have approval before accepting any of those animals. Are there any other questions on the contract? Ian?
Just a quick, not really contract. Does the police department have like a chip reader for the stray animals when they encounter them?
Dennis, go right ahead.
We do not have a chip reader. We actually have a good relationship with Dr. Gerber and Columbus Countryside Vet Clinic, and a lot of times during business hours when we pick up a stray, that's the first place we go.
Okay, so, but we do have access, like, is it standard practice for you to check for a chip before they go to the Humane Society?
Yes, if it's within the hours and it's, a Sunday, we wouldn't have that option to do that. But if it's during Dr. Gerber's hours, we can get the dog out there, yes, we do.
And that might be something to think about. I have no idea how much a chip reader costs. Maybe that's something the police department should have on hand for times when the vet clinic is not open.
Sure, I can take a look into that, absolutely.
Do you know if the Humane Society does the chip reading right away?
Yes, they will as well.
Okay.
We've had it a couple of times over the last few years that I'm aware of. We go out there and actually staff recognize the dog without even a chip. So
Okay.
that's helped us in other ways as well. But yeah, the Humane Society automatically chips them. That's part of their intake process. But if we have an opportunity
Right, but by then, we've already,
Correct, we've already got a lot of time and miles into it. So
Sure.
if we can save that, we will take every opportunity to do that.
Sure. Great, something to think about, maybe look at the cost of one and
Sure.
see if it's, if it pays, but might be something to consider for next year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, unless there's any further questions on the Dodge County stray animal contract for 2021, I'll entertain any action from the council on that.
Alder Pfeiffer will make a motion to approve the Dodge County Stray Animal Contract for 2021.
Alder Gurley seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the Dodge County stray animal contract for 2021, the amount of $1,100, which includes up to 5 animals, and that the Humane Society must have approval before accepting any of those animals. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, could we please take a roll call on that, Pat?
Adams,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
Pifferone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
motion carries.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to, actually, Lisa, can you hear me? Can you turn off the podium mic? We're getting a little bit of humming in here. Thank you. Move on to item number 4, consider and approve the Dodge County Sheriff's 911 Joint Powers Agreement for 2021. This is a routine action that we do every year, this time of each year. Essentially allows our 911 system to operate jurisdictionally, so it's pretty straightforward. Any questions on this? Dennis is still here. Otherwise, it's usually pretty straightforward. There is no cost to this either, is there? Okay. Mutual aid. There's no questions. I'll entertain any action from the council on the 911 Joint Powers Agreement.
Alder Ryan, I'll make a motion to approve the Dodge County Sheriff's 911 Joint Powers Agreement for 2021.
Alder Piper will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the Dodge County Sheriff's 911 Joint Powers Agreement for 2021. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Motion passes. Before we get past this, I'll just ask, are we expecting one of these from Columbia County?
Dennis and I had talked about that previously, and he does not recall seeing one.
Okay.
But we can certainly follow up, and there was some question on, maybe with us being located within the county compared to Dodge County, that had some difference. But
Okay.
we can check and just make sure that before the end of the year, we get it submitted if they need to have one.
Okay. Or we could just look back at the minutes to last year. For some reason, I remember having 2 of them, but they never showed up at the same time. But I'm getting older, so. Yeah. All right, thank you. We'll move on to item number 5 then, which is consider and approve Resolution 22-20, the Columbia County All Hazards Mitigation Plan. This, again, was reviewed at the last committee of the whole meeting. Amy Sandow, Emergency Management Director, was here kind of explaining this process. I believe the county has to go through this every 5 years to lay out a countywide plan, and they are looking for us to join with them through this resolution so we can actually participate and get funding through FEMA for identified projects in that plan. It's the All Hazards Mitigation Plan required by the Federal Emergency Management Agency as a condition of future grant funding for mitigation projects. I like federal funding when we can get it. Any questions on this one? If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve Resolution 22-20.
Read motions to approve Resolution 22-20 to adopt the 2020 Columbia County All Hazards Mitigation Plan.
Alder Ryan, second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 22-20, resolution to adopt the 2020 Columbia County All Hazards Mitigation Plan. Any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to number 6. Consider and approve the Halloween safety recommendations. This was discussed at the last committee of the whole. There was a request for some the post of no parking signs on both sides of Avalon Road between Park Avenue and Brookside Lane, which has been done in the past, and also Warner Street, the east side from top of the hill to Brevity Lane. The one thing I did notice on the work order, and maybe this was just an old work order, but the date actually says October 26th on it, and I'm maybe, okay, so it's October 31st would be the correct date. No parking from 4:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. on October 31st. Also included in our packet, we put the DHS guidelines on Halloween, showing the recommendations for the Department of Health Services. on their recommendations for Halloween activities this year. Traditional trick-or-treating from neighbor to neighbor is not recommended. The city is not obviously hosting any events at their facilities, but we can't prevent the public from going from private property to private property if they wish to do so. But we certainly hope that people exercise safe and responsible activities if they're going to participate, which will be 4 to 7 p.m. on October 31st. Are there any questions on item number 6? If there are no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the Halloween. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ian.
No questions. I would just like to reiterate the safety guidelines and that I would strongly urge citizens not to participate in trick-or-treating just because we are, going forward with parking enforcement and things of that nature. It's still a good idea to stay home, do something fun with your kids at home.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right, if there are no further comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the Halloween safety recommendations for 2021.
Adams moves to approve the Halloween safety recommendations for 2020.
Ryan, second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the Halloween safety recommendations for trick-or-treating for 2020. Any discussion on the motion? If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Move on to number 7. Consider and approve acceptance of donation towards fence capping at Kiwanis Park. This was reviewed at the Committee of the Whole. The Kiwanis Group of Columbus would like to donate $3,000 to the city for the specific purpose of purchasing yellow fence capping on diamonds 4, 5, and 6 in Kiwanis Park. The total project cost is $5,358. The remaining portion of that would be absorbed by Recreation for $958 and also from the DPW budget for $1,400 to complete the project this year. I have the quote in here from American Fence Company for $5,358 and a $3,000 donation. I believe there is no need to authorize the project. It's just to accept the donation of $3,000. Unless anyone has any questions, we've got Amy Jo here who can probably answer any questions. Otherwise, I'd like to see a motion to accept the donation towards the fence capping at Kiwanis Park.
Alder Ryan, I'll make a motion to accept the donation of $3,000 from the Kiwanis for fence capping at the Kiwanis Park.
All apart from acceptance that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to accept $3,000 from the Columbus Kiwanis Group for the yellow fence capping on Diamond 4, 5, and 6 in Kiwanis Park. Is there any discussion on that motion? If there's no discussion, could we please take a roll call, Pat?
Gray,
Aye.
Piperone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 8. Consider and approve Resolution 24-20 for the CDBG closed participation plan. Matt Schreiber is here. He did present us with the plan at the Committee of the Whole, last Committee of the Whole meeting, and now the resolution is in here. Matt, did you have anything to add?
Just to clarify, any motion made tonight, we should mention that the Plan Commission will be the Citizen Participation
Okay.
Committee. Based on my discussions with DOA, Wisconsin Department of Administration, we can use existing committees. Looking through the DOA's guidelines, there really isn't anything clear as far as how you go about that designation of that committee. So based on my research, if as long as there's something in the minutes, then we have something to go back on. So that would be my one recommendation. But other than that, what you see, the sample participation plan and, well, I guess our participation plan and our resolution were from the sample participation plan and sample resolution from DOA. So this isn't really anything that, it was more of a fill in the blanks for me, and and part of the process for the CDBG project. So, any questions for me?
Thanks for putting the plan together. I did notice when I read through the plan that it's, it explains that you need to appoint a committee, and that you did hear from the DOR that it's okay to use the plan commission for that, but it's not.
Or other committee that the
Sure.
we're recommending plan commission because based on what I know, that would meet the requirements of the participation plan as
Sure.
it's outlined.
But it wasn't identified in the resolution specifically, so I think that does help clear it up.
Okay.
Yep. Any questions for Matt while he is up? All right, if there are no further questions, I think what we'd want is a motion to approve Resolution 2420, and also that the Plan Commission is identified as the Citizen Participation Committee.
Yeah.
Alder Adams will make a motion to approve Resolution 24-20, recognizing that the Plan Commission will take the place of the Citizen Participation Committee.
Alder Pfeiffer will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve Resolution 24-20, the CDBG Citizen Participation Plan, and that the Plan Commission of Columbus would be the Citizen Participation Committee. Is there any further discussion on the motion? If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Motion passes. Move on to number 9. Consider and approve Plan Commission recommendation regarding certified survey map for Philip and Sheila Worthen at 146 East Mill Street. This went through the Plan Commission last week. Since Matt is up, it's pretty straightforward. I'll just have Matt tell you what it's about.
Sure. The former Marine Credit Union has been sold to F&M. When F&M Bank was going through their due diligence, they had a survey done. The survey showed that the property to the south of them, there was an encroachment on the property. So they are working with the property owner to go through the CSM to basically shift their lot line and go through some sort of transaction where the property owners at 146 Mill, the Worthens, would be buying a strip of, I think it's like 12 feet. So it's basically adjusting a property boundary. It's fairly straightforward, being that both properties have the same zoning, there was no rezoning issues. And being that it's a central business district, there's very little setback requirements. So from zoning perspective and land division perspective, this was something that was fairly simple review for Plan Commission, and Plan Commission approved it, or recommended approval for council. So.
Okay. So we do have recommended approval from the Plan Commission. Are there any questions for Matt while he's up? If there's no questions, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the recommendation of the Plan Commission to approve the certified survey map for Philip and Sheila Worthen at 146 East Mill Street.
Alder Pfeiffer will make a motion to approve the certified survey map for Philip and Sheila Worthen at 146 East Mill Street.
Alder Ryan, second.
Yes.
We get a motion in 2 seconds to approve the CSM for Philip and Sheila Worthen at 146 East Mill Street. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to item number 10. Consider and approve the health insurance and benefit approvals for 2020. This was, again, discussed at the last committee of the whole meeting. The renewal this year is a 0% increase, which is very good news for the city. In recent years, we've had some very steep increases that have been not enjoyable to navigate when you're trying to provide good health care coverage for city employees. The recommendation from staff is to authorize the continued offering of 2 health insurance plan options, authorize the continuation of HSA contributions by the city at an amount of $2,000 for family spouses, employee spouse, and employee children plans, and $1,000 for single coverage, and authorize employer contribution rates to continue at 88% of the lowest cost for the high deductible plan 85% of the lowest cost of the traditional plan. So the recommendation from staff is to renew with the Dean plan at 0% increase. Are there any questions on this? Kyle can answer them for you, I'm sure. If there's no questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve the health insurance and benefits for 2021.
Alder Ryan, I'll make a motion to approve the health insurance and benefit approvals for 2021.
Adams seconds.
We have a motion and a second to approve the health insurance and benefits for 2021 based upon the recommendations of staff. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no discussion, let's please take a roll call on that, Pat.
Pifferone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 11 is consider and approve the Columbus Area EMS contract and amendment number 6 of the intergovernmental agreement. This has been an ongoing process for the past several months. City Administrator Ellefson is part of the CAEMS board and has done a fantastic job of representing the city in negotiations. This new contract is going to include 2 additional municipalities that we kind of tested out last year that will become part of this new contract. I believe the contract is for 5 years. Is that correct, Kyle? Yep. Any questions on this? Kyle is our expert. If there are no questions on this, I'll entertain a motion to approve the Columbus Area EMS contract and amendment number 6 for the intergovernmental agreement.
Alder Pfeiffer will make a motion to approve the Columbus Area Emergency Medical Services Group contract and amendment number 6 of IGA.
Adams seconds.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the Columbus Area EMS contract and amendment number 6 of the intergovernmental agreement. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there is no discussion, could you please take a roll call, Pat?
Pifferone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams,
Aye.
Gray.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. And thank you again to our city administrator for representing us and helping to negotiate the terms of this new contract. We still do receive a high level of service at a fairly low cost of being part of this group, so thank you. All right, on to number 12, consider and approve the RFP for building inspection services. We have gone through the RFP at the last committee of the whole. I think everybody was fairly impressed with the language in the RFP for those services. That RFP is in your packet. I don't know that there's any further questions on that. I think all the concerns were addressed during the committee of the whole discussion. The tentative timeline is to publish the RFP once approved by the council. Then the city would accept RFP submissions for approximately 3 weeks with responses due on Tuesday, November 10th. And then the staff would evaluate submissions, rank the proposals, and present information to the committee of the whole on November 17th. The committee of the whole could recommend a firm for approval based on the RFP submissions and staff analysis. So we do have to have building inspection services for next year. So this is something that we need to keep on track. So are there any questions on the RFP? See no questions on the RFP. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the RFP for building inspection services?
Alder Ryan, I'll make a motion to approve the RFP for building inspection services for 2021.
Alder Gray seconds.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the RFP for building inspection and related services for 2021. Any discussion on the motion? If there is no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to item number 13. Consider and approve the repurposing 2020 budget funds to outfit the end loader for snow plowing. There is some updates in the packet from the last committee of the whole. I believe there were some questions about the shipping cost or freight cost, and that's been identified at $3,800 approximately. Sounds like the loaner will be coming down on a truck to Columbus. We'll have the loaner, they'll pick up our unit, take it up there, and then install the plow and then return it. As noted in here, also, the tractor lease agreement expired this spring, and we do not have a continuing agreement for 2021, so there is no further obligation to that lease. That was a question. If the DPW feels like there is a short-term need, if we happen to get snow earlier before this unit is returned to us with the new plow and wing on it, that they probably have some opportunities here locally to cover that piece of equipment through a rental, if need be. Hopefully we won't get that much snow that early. All right, thank you for the follow-up information on that. As outlined in the last packet as well, it identifies the funding sources for that, some budget items from the DPW combined with contingency and buildings and grounds to help pay for the plow and wing and also the shipping. Any further questions on this one? Trina, go ahead.
Oh, so the shipping cost is for everything, the round trip, with pieces going both ways?
That's my understanding, but Kyle probably knows more about.
Yeah, so I asked a few more questions. Again, this was one that I think, Zach had really started, and I'm, piecing it together, but essentially it's more complicated than I would have thought. I was thinking plow, wing, bolt on, you just start plowing snow. I think it involves a whole variety of refitting with hydraulic controls and levers in the cab and things like that. So it's actually shipping the whole unit up to the factory where all that would happen, and so that's why it's shipping, because it's a trucking back and forth to Minnesota essentially, because this is not the kind of repair you do locally in the shop.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions on this? If there are no further questions, I'll entertain a motion on item number 13 from the council.
Alder Gray moves to approve the repurposing of 2020 budget funds to outfit the end loader for snow removal.
All the pipe set and set.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the repurposing of 2020 budgeted funds to outfit the end loader for snow plowing. Is there any discussion on the motion? If there's no further discussion, could we please take a roll call, Pat?
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
Piperone,
Aye.
motion carries.
Thank you. Move on to item number 14. Consider and approve the Columbus Police Local WPPA number 237 employment agreement. Kyle, if you don't mind, I'll just turn it over to you to kind of give a recap since you were involved in more of this than I was.
Sure. So essentially there was just a few language changes that were proposed back and forth, sort of working through the tentative agreement that you find after the agenda memo. Article number 13, which is the insurance and retirement, we're going to be having them move to a more traditional contribution rate as compared to our other employees in the city, so that's going to be standardized. There are some shift differentials that we talked about going up to 50 cents an hour, and then the field training officer pay is going up to 75 cents per hour worked. There's some cleaning up of the language in the clothing allowances to talk about probation periods versus probation year, because sometimes that's a floating number depending on the availability of training and how well they progress through that. Cleaning up items in the clothing allowance column to match things. For example, we don't write out manual citations anymore. Those are generated by the computer, so the citation holders are really irrelevant. And so that was cleaned up. We cleaned up the language as well about where employees can reside and made it so that it was much more measurable for both sides to figure out, from point A to point B, how we would figure out if you're in or out. And then there was some fair share language as well that the union proposed one thing, and our labor attorney kind of did a quick review, and they found a area in the middle that they could both agree on, where all members and non-members are equally and fairly represented by the bargaining unit, basically. And there was also an update to the wages, and that's in Appendix A under Item 9. And it works out to a 2.2% increase the first year, 2.3% for the remaining 2 years. And that was something that was lower than what was asked for, but we did feel like represented a good value to the city based on where our current police department employees are compensated in relation to other communities. And we felt like this was a good way to reward our current employees, improve retention, and hopefully aid in recruitment. And there was also some changes in the sergeant pay. The rate of increase in years 2 and 3 kind of match the patrol officers, but we tried to get a larger separation in year 1 because there had been some compression over time and there wasn't that much salary difference between being a patrol officer and a sergeant. And there's other duties and responsibilities that come with that, so we wanted to make sure we were recognizing that. And I think that pretty much encompasses the changes that we have in the agreement before you.
Thank you for letting me get a drink. Any questions for Kyle on this? Ian, go ahead.
Not really so much a question, and not that I distrust our police chief on making the best decision, but on item number 7, with the resident issue, the last sentence, the last portion where they're saying who are not in compliance with this requirement must become compliant on changing their residence unless otherwise authorized by the chief. That seems awfully vague, like they could potentially move even further away if they're currently non-compliant. I don't know if that's the best language for it to be. I don't believe that our current police chief would do anything to make the force weaker or response times less, but I don't know if that's the best language or the best way to resolve that.
Go ahead, Katie.
I guess I'm confused because it states they must become compliant upon changing.
Unless authorized by the chief.
Sure.
So he has the sole authority to allow them to be non-compliant.
I think there was something mentioned in the committee of the whole about this as well, something about the residents of, or where they take residence and us changing the radius. Now it's a 30-mile radius. Is that correct, Chief Weiner? I remember you speaking to something about the point of if we were taking it, say, the pinpoint being city center of Columbus and taking a 30-mile
Yes,
radius.
what we did with the change in the language in the new contract is we tightened it up. The previous language was very broad and included 30 miles. It talked about from the city limits to, it could have been a township that you live in. And the example that I give is there's a lot of big townships around, and you could live on the far edge of the township, I'll say Westport, over by Wanakee. From here to the edge of Westport could be, let's say, 29.9 miles, but you could live another 15 or 20 miles into Westport, away from Columbus, be 40, 45 miles, and still be in compliance. So what we did with this contract is we tightened it up as a crow flies from City Hall, 30 miles, period.
Thank you. That's what I was remembering correctly.
That part's super clear. The part that's still muddy is those who are not compliant currently could still technically be allowed to be non-moved within a similar non-compliant region or an even less compliant region to how it's drafted by the discretion of the police chief. So before we get into that anymore, do we have any people that are currently non-compliant with how this is, does that make it even better?
Right now, with the union contract, they have 6 months from the end of their probationary period to get within whatever the contract is. So right now, we don't, under the current contract that is effective today, we probably only have one employee. No, I take that back. He moved much closer. Right now, under the current contract, as it's written, with the vagueness with the township, which is kind of created why I thought we needed to clean this up, he is now in compliance. So he would be grandfathered into the next year when it's tightened up a little more. But if he moves from his current location, he has to get within the 30 miles of the city limits, period.
Right, unless you authorize him not to.
Correct. And that language has always been in there, and quite frankly, I would be very, very hard pressed to allow someone to live further away. We're a smaller department. If we need to call somebody in and something's going down, an hour and a half isn't going to do it.
Kyle, did you have a comment?
Regionally, this is a topic that has been addressed by many municipalities, and many municipalities are actually relaxing this requirement with the difficulty in recruitment, retention. It's a much different environment than it was. So this is actually probably more strict than others. And by the same recruitment and retention thing that we talk about often, if we had an employee that was a good employee that we wanted to keep, but they wanted to move 5 miles away to be, on mom or dad's property or on the lake or something like that, I think we would really have to weigh the pros and cons of telling them, that's unfortunate, you're going to have to turn in your resignation, versus saying, we don't know if we can actually backfill their position. So I think in this way, you preserve the authority of the chief, you give us some flexibility in staffing, and based on what I've seen for current recruitment for the police department, it's a challenge here and everywhere. So I don't think this is something that's out of the ordinary. And, I think they were actually asking to potentially expand it to allow a larger radius. So this is existing language that you see that's primarily retained in here.
Okay. Thank you for that, Kyle.
I'm okay with just leaving it as is. Thank you, Kyle.
I'm also fine leaving it as is. It's important for our officers to be from the area and familiar with the area and able to get to the area quickly, but I'd like to leave a little flexibility for having a larger pool of qualified candidates.
And let me point out, this does not give a larger flexibility to attract candidates. This would only affect people who were employed previously. So there's, based on the chief's reply, a singular person this language affects. It's not a large sector of people. But with that being said, I do trust the chief in making the best decision, and I just wanted to point out that that may or may not be necessary. In this case, I don't think it's large.
The language is a little bit confusing to me, as I know what it's trying to address, but when it says must become compliant upon changing the employee's residence, if the employee was in compliance 5 years ago and we changed the policy and they don't move, they're still in compliance until they move. That's the way that I'm reading this, which I believe is why maybe they're authorizing some discretion on behalf of the chief, is that if one of your officers is right on the edge and they're going to move 3 miles this way or 3 miles that way, that you can, kind of have a conversation with your officer. Maybe I'm interpreting it differently. That's the way I'm reading it. Upon changing the employee's residence,
My understanding of how and why we worded that was to address the gap between the old contract and the new contract.
Okay.
Because under the old contract, again, with the township verbiage that was in there, it allows them to potentially live 40, 50 plus miles away.
Yep.
So then if someone is compliant under the old contract, they're grandfathered in, but then if they decide to move again, they don't have the same right. They're under the new contract, which means they have to be within the 30.
Okay. Yeah. I think by cleaning up the language,
But this contract gives no discretion for anyone who is currently compliant or any future employees. it really only applies to a singular officer. So, I mean, it's a very minute detail.
Employees hired prior to January 1st, 2021 who are not in compliance with this requirement must become compliant.
Right, so
Yeah.
all future employees have to be compliant, there is no discretion.
Yep. And I think just by the chief explaining, we're trying to tighten up this language to the best of our ability, but still offer flexibility so we can staff the police department, that it just wouldn't, I couldn't see the chief saying, sure, you can move 30 miles that way, when we know we need to have them here in emergency situations. So I'm also comfortable with, leaving the language in to offer the chief some discretion, so.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on this? If there's no further discussion, would need a motion to approve the Columbus Police Local WPPA number 237 employment agreement. This is a 3-year contract, correct? Yep.
Alder Ryan, I'll make a motion to approve the Columbus Local WPPA number 237 employment agreement.
Reed seconds.
Alder Gerfield, second.
Right, we have a motion and 2 seconds to approve the Columbus Police Local WPPA number 237 employment agreement. Any discussion on the motion? If there's no further discussion, could we please take a roll call, Pat?
Ryan,
Aye.
Adams, Gray,
Aye.
Piperone,
Aye.
Reed.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item number 15, consider and approve claims in the amount of $753,602.77. Are there any questions on the city claims? If there are no questions on the claims, I'll take a motion to approve them in the amount read.
Alder Piper will make a motion to approve the claims in the amount read.
Adams seconds.
We have a motion and a second to approve the city claims in the amount of $753,602.77. Any discussion on that motion? There's no further discussion. Could we please take a roll call, Pat?
Adams,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
Piperone,
Aye.
Reed,
Aye.
Ryan.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. On to report of city officers. I'll turn it over to Administrator Ellison.
All right, thank you. Just a few updates. We had a kind of a short turnaround from the last meeting. Hibbert Street, basically all the utilities on Hibbert Street are now done. The storm sewer work on Turner could be another week or two. They're still kind of working through that, and there's been a few hiccups here and there, but it's getting installed. The north portion of the project, that has the curb, the sidewalk, driveway approaches, and the first lift of asphalt that's been installed. So it's starting to look like an actual street out there on the north end, which is really encouraging and good to see. We're still working through a few issues. There was a cracked storm sewer pipe that they found during the inspection that has to be replaced. A couple elevation conflicts as they're running storm sewer and regular sewer, and things that are closer than they had hoped. So we're working through some of that. Restoration work is going to be starting on the north end of the project now. We're going to get as much, or they're going to get as much of that done as they can before the weather turns decidedly colder. And then on the south end of the project, the curb and gutter for the rest of the project is hopefully going to start on Friday or Monday, sort of weather dependent to see if we get a lot of rain. But that's encouraging because that's really the second phase then of getting the whole project complete. So I think that's all very encouraging. The DPW has also worked with them to identify some different leaf pickup patterns and parking vehicles down there where residents can come and collect their leaves, because we can't do the normal leaf pickup method given the condition of the street. So that's all going relatively well, and hopefully that continues. DPW recruitment. We've been talking about replacing Zach after he left for Waukesha County. We completed the recruitment or the application period, and we really didn't reach that number of applicants that allowed us to feel like we had an adequate pool of candidates to really evaluate. We're sort of in that process now of evaluating a couple different options, short-term and long-term. And I plan on bringing that information back probably at the next meeting for some additional discussion and guidance, depending on if there's other directions we might want to head or other plans we might have to implement. But I do want to just, kind of highlight that the position itself is pretty critical to what we do. That serves in one of the most service-forward departments we have. So I think it's important that we do it right. I think it is that important. So while I don't really like going without that position filled, I think it's important that we just, like I said, get it right. So stay tuned for more details on that. It's been a while since we talked about the pool, and I have a couple updates I wanted to share from Amy Jo. Over the past couple of weeks, we've had Newman Pools there a couple times. They were able to identify 2 significant leaks in the deep end of the pool. The leaks that were found were between that stainless steel gutter and then the shell of the pool. And so the recommendation was to inject a chemical grout between the two to seal off that loss of water. And hopefully the contractor will be here tomorrow to make those repairs in those 2 areas. So I think that's encouraging. Newman Pools also found additional leaks in the surge tank. They did a static test over the weekend and confirmed that they were still losing water. So they discovered there was some shear pins on a linkage for the main drain valves that were broken. I can read it. I don't know exactly what that means. But they fixed those. So that was good that they found something that was broken. They fixed it. Once they did that repair, they filled up the surge tank, and they continued to have a leak, unfortunately. They allowed it to continue leaking until they could kind of pinpoint the leak, and the easy way to do that is just wait till it stops leaking. And when that happened, basically there was a return pipe, so it's a pipe not under pressure that comes to the surge tank. And once it got below that point, the water stayed at the same spot and didn't go down any further. So the good part of that is that we know where it is. They were inside the surge tank on Friday. Late. I think it was supposed to be at 7 a.m. It turned into 4:30 p.m. And Amy Jo was there to kind of make sure they got in and understand what was going on. So thanks to Amy Jo for spending her Friday night with Newman Pools. And so we don't know the cost yet, unfortunately. It could be easy, and you just cut the pipe from the point of the crack, add a collar, add some new pipe, and simple. Or if the cracked pipe goes back through the wall, it might be more costly, and that's something we might have to address next year, depending on the exact details and cost. The pipe does run under the hallway in the bathhouse, but we did do some slip lining recently, and so I think Amy Jo is looking at if that is the severity or that's the location or the extent of it, that maybe there's a possibility to slip line that pipe because it doesn't run under pressure. So those are possibilities that are in the works right now. And Amy Jo wanted me to point out that all of this work was done with the amount within the amount of money that was approved previously, not to exceed $5,900. And the injection of the chemical grout is already being covered under the normal operational funds they have available in the pool budget for this year. And last, Mid-America Pool will be here during the last week of October to resurface the pool. They'll be replacing the caulk lines and repairing expansion joints. And then after that is cured, we'll do the winterization and start preparing for 2021, which I think pretty much universally we hope will be less eventful than 2020. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Amy Jo. All right, we'll start off with some good news. Today, the city was notified that we have been awarded another grant, a tourism relief to accelerate vitality and economic lift, or travel stimulus grant from the Wisconsin Department of Tourism. The application that was submitted was for $5,000, which is approximately 25% of the Columbus Tourism Commission usual promotion and development budget. The grant will allow the Tourism Commission to complete the Columbus Comeback campaign, which will enable marketing efforts that would not have been completed because of the room tax shortfalls due to COVID-19. Our media coordinator, Lisa Wolf, completed much of this work needed to submit the application and to receive funding for this campaign. So thank you very much, Lisa, for your work on that. On the topic of grants, I wanted to recognize that 2020 has been an extremely successful year for the city of Columbus. We started with the award of the $450,000 LRIP grant for the Hibbert Street reconstruction project earlier this year. We've also been awarded another DOT grant, the Transportation Alternatives, or TAP grant, of $405,000 for connecting bike trails in the upcoming years. We have also approved the resolution this evening for the CDBG Close program, which is a non-competitive grant totaling over $423,000 for future projects. In my 7.5 years serving as a council member and as a mayor, I've never seen this amount of success in applying for and receiving grants, and I wanted to be sure to recognize the efforts of city staff who helped identify and apply for these funds. Matthew Schreiber, our Economic Development and Planning Director, and City Engineer Jason Letha have been an integral part of bringing those opportunities to the attention of myself and the City Council during a year that has been filled with much uncertainty, change, and transition. So thank you to Matt, Lisa, and Jason, and city staff who continue to give us the occasion to celebrate both current and future opportunities for the City of Columbus with this funding. Have a little bit of information here for voting too. Yes, thank you. Let's give. It's a lot of money. It's $1.3 million. A little information on voting. I did vote today as early in-person absentee voting started today and runs through October 30th. Electors can in-person vote during regular business hours at City Hall through the 30th, must be registered to receive a ballot. Reminder that the polls on Election Day will be limited to 30 to 35 people to maintain social distancing. So if you're concerned with long lines or have limited time to vote on Election Day, then please consider voting early or in-person absentee. Pat did give me some information here. I believe we've got 1,387 requests for early absentee mail-in ballots, and that 948 have been returned as of today, which is great. Today there were approximately 100 people that voted in person today for absentee in person, which is very, very good. Glad to see people taking advantage of that. If you have requested an absentee ballot by mail, that can be returned at the polling place on Election Day. However, all electors will have to wait their turn in line at the polling place along with everyone else. You can also return those ballots to City Hall here during regular business hours, or the drop box at City Hall, or the library book return until 8 p.m. on Election Day. While I understand there are many voters who prefer the tradition of voting in person on Election Day, that option is in place for those who wish to do so. However, I would encourage voters to please consider early voting options this election, as many of you did for the spring election due to COVID-19, to help protect the health and safety of our election workers and the electorate. Did I hit everything that you gave me, Pat? All right. Thank you. And lastly, I wanted to wish my wife a very happy birthday today. Most normal people are together, to celebrate, but this is the life of being elected official, and I wanted to thank my wife for all the support she gives me in doing what I love to do, and to wish her a happy birthday. She's not watching, so. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Alder Ryan, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Alder Piper will second.
Get a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We'll stand adjourned for a few minutes and return with the committee of the whole meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Pat, can you hear me? Quick question. I've had a couple people ask me about absentee mail-in ballots. If they've applied for one, do they still have to utilize that, or can they vote in person and not utilize their absentee ballot? Okay, good. Okay, good, because I've had a few people express
Good evening and welcome to the Columbus Common Council's Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, October 20th of 2020. The time is now 8:03 p.m. We are in Columbus City Hall chambers. Pat, would you please take the roll?
Adams,
Present.
Gray,
It doesn't appear to be me.
Sorry, yeah, I'm present.
okay, thank you. McCabe is excused. Piperone,
Present.
Reed,
Here.
Ryan,
Here.
Tom.
Okay, all present. And this meeting has been noticed with the proper state statutes and local ordinances. Number 3 is a motion to approve the agenda. I would like to suggest an amendment to this agenda of flipping the two closed sessions that we have this evening of number 12 and number 14, so that legal counsel may leave prior to the secondary, and other staff not needed can leave prior to the secondary closed session. So with that suggestion, if anybody would like to make a motion to approve that, the agenda with that amendment.
Make a motion to approve the agenda and give the chair flexibility as to the order of the items.
Adams seconds.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda with giving the chair some flexibility to amend the item's order. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Is there any opposed?
The reason I mention that is because you may want to move 8 up since those gentlemen are here.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, number 4 is citizen comments. This evening, did we have anybody signed up for the Committee of the Whole citizen comment? Pat? No. And I don't believe we had anybody signed up on Zoom either, so. Okay, we will move on to number 5, which is the department reports. Within the packets this evening, we have the DPW report from September 2020, the Lifestar report for September 2020, fire department's report from September of 2020, and the police report from September of 2020. Did any council members have any comments or questions on any of the department reports listed within your packet? Seeing none. Figured we could go ahead and move number 8 up, which is review and discuss the Summit Court snow plowing. As long as that's okay with everybody, so that the gentlemen that are here this evening can be heard on that. Kyle, I know that you were gonna kind of head us off on this one. Let me get to the
Yes.
right page.
So this involves some of the work done by Zach Navin during his time here. And the memo kind of lays it out. We have for the past several winters, I think, worked with the Summit Court Condo Association to work together on snow removal. It's a little bit of an unusual arrangement. I don't think we have any other arrangements like that. I think the initial thought back with the previous Director of Public Works was that this would save us time and improve efficiency. And I think when Zach looked at it, basically what he was saying is that he doesn't feel like the amount of time it takes matches the benefit that there might be for the city. And so then, I think there was a comparison of time spent, and during the same snow event, it took 90 minutes with 2 tandem dump trucks and the end loader to remove the snow from Summit Court. And then during the same snow event, the city spent 20 minutes on Hillcrest and 25 minutes on Highland Court. So what we're asking of the council, and I think this does come up every fall, is to determine if the snow removal agreement should be continued. And then secondary to that decision would be, if it does continue, staff would like some direction on if, there's some cost sharing, if there's a difference between the service on Summit Court versus other areas, if there's a desire to do anything with cost, or if this is something where we should be looking for other opportunities in other neighborhoods to extend the same kind of benefit to them. And so that's kind of in a nutshell the information I got from Zach and where the situation sits right now.
Any immediate comments or questions? Alder Adams.
So, if I'm understanding this correctly, Summit Court is the only specially designated area, I guess, for this agreement throughout the city?
That's my understanding, correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
sorry.
oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead. Continue.
So my thinking on this, looking at the time differential that we have here, 90 minutes compared to 20 and 25 minutes, I don't think it's unreasonable to maybe explore a cost-sharing agreement between the city and Summit. Because that's more than, good God, that's 4 times as long-ish to do the snow removal. Like, how much is that going to cost in labor? So that's my own 2 cents on that.
Ian.
I personally, I understand why they're asking for this, but I don't believe the city should enter into specific agreements on a very minute portion of the city that does take up more time and expense for the city. It's just not logical in my respect. I understand that the vast majority are retired individuals, but I mean, we all have retired individuals living next to us that have to deal with the same issues. We can't start making compensations for one area when it's something that affects the entire city.
Further comments from council?
I can understand that there's a cost implication, but I guess sometimes if it's doesn't seem to be broken, let's keep it as as a status quo like we've been doing. Would be my recommendation.
Trina.
While looking at the time differential, I would think we would probably want to not make an agreement for next year. I would like to consider continuing for this year, possibly talking about cost sharing for the difference as a type of service, more or less.
Go ahead. Mayor Tom.
I just have a question, Zach. I guess in some of the information here, where you had mentioned the time that it took to do Summit Court versus Hillcrest and Highland Court. Does that mean that we're doing the same thing in Hillcrest and Highland Court, that they are pushing the snow into a pile and that we're coming in and removing it?
No, I think my understanding would be that Summit Court receives a unique method of snow removal with the contractor plowing the public road and the driveways and other areas and collecting the snow that we then come in and truck out and remove with a loader. The other ones receive traditional snow plowing treatment, I believe, where everyone's responsible for their own driveway. And if you get plowed in, that's on each homeowner to address that. That's my understanding of how the different methods on each.
Where that's the comparable that they're kind of providing, okay, those neighborhoods.
So it's taking longer because the snow is in the center of the court.
Well, I think, yeah, there's a combination of things. I think there's more snow than there would be because it's more snow than just the road snow. And then additionally, because there's more snow in a condensed area, there's a thought that it needs to be removed more frequently to kind of free up that space, because it's not something that stays all year long or all winter long. We have to remove it when it gets to a certain point. So I think it's just more labor intensive of a process in that court using the method we have now.
I'm curious because it said it took 2 full-size dump trucks and is it the end loader, to do that for 90 minutes. I don't know how many, off the top of my head, I don't know how many like plow or service snow removal vehicles that the city has in operation, and I'm curious to know that because if it takes 90 minutes to remove snow from one court, who's waiting and how long? I guess that's not what's on my mind.
So I don't know the exact number of trucks in the fleet.
Yeah.
This is one of my shortcomings as DPW director on an interim basis. But my anticipation is that it doesn't happen in the activity of the main snowstorm. I think this is as they get into the cleanup part of it. So I don't think necessarily we're making other people wait. But it is something that does take staff time away from other things. So it's not like streets aren't getting plowed, but it is also something that extends the amount of time that it takes to clean up, I believe.
So this is sort of maybe the day following or after the initial snow cleanup.
Yeah, I think the
occurs.
details would depend based on the amount and duration, and is it a weekend, is it a weeknight, are we coming in tomorrow anyways, and a lot of variables would come into play.
Okay.
Are we allowed to comment at all?
I'm sorry. At this time, I don't believe so. Ian, you may go.
So I 100% understand where the residents are coming from on this, and they've gotten used to expecting it from the city. But their private contractor, if their individual driveways get plowed back in, they can have their private contractor come back out and clear them again. Or they could have their private contractor clear their driveways after the city clears the street. It's no different than any other resident citywide, and we shouldn't be paying extra attention and extra dollars to a handful of residents. It's just not fair.
Any other thoughts on Ian's point? Trina Reed?
I suppose I just hate breaking the non-contract understanding right at the beginning of the season. While I agree that we need to be more standardized in the future for next season, I would like to give a little bit of warning.
I would concur with exactly what Alderman Reed just said.
And just to piggyback off that, if keep everything the same for this year, and then over the course of the next year, figure out if we want to do like a cost sharing thing or if we continue it next year. Is that kind of feeling?
I'm assuming we probably wouldn't continue it next year. I just don't want to break a non-contract at the last minute. And there is no actual contract, it's just an understanding.
Ian?
We aren't, in my opinion, we're not breaking any contract. We're just giving a very minute portion of our population extra benefits that the rest of our population pays for. And that's completely unfair. Just because we've done it in the past doesn't mean we should continue doing it. They have plenty of time before the first major snowfall to coordinate with their individual contractor to clear their driveways after the city clears it, or once again to break out the bottom of their driveway, whatever they need to do. It's unfair. I don't like when the bottom of my driveway gets plowed in. It gets plowed in all the time, just like all of yours do and everyone else's does. We shouldn't be spending money on a minute population that the rest of our population pays for.
So Trina's saying that she'd like to hold out for, till the end of this year, and just continue with the way things are for now until next year, and assuming we won't continue, and Ian, would like to pull the plug immediately.
Pipeline would like to see it go for this year, and then we can have talks. And we can have further talks for next year, because I agree, as Mayor Tom said earlier, we could have snow tonight.
I'd like to continue for the year and then address it again next year, and to have it be known that there's a high probability that this contract will not be renewed next year.
Any other thoughts from council?
I don't know, is everyone gonna call into the DPW when their driveway gets plowed in? Because if one citizen gets that treatment, then shouldn't we all? That's ridiculous.
Thank you, Ian. If there's, I guess I'm on the fence. I think, I understand the frustration, and obviously I understand that this has been going on for 6 or 7 years. But I do have concerns with treating one resident or a group of residents over other residents. With that being said, I do like Alder Reed's idea to continue it through the end of this year, and with the idea in mind that we likely will not be renewing this agreement next year. So give them some time to prepare and figure out what they'd like to do for their snow removal. Any other comments? Go ahead, Mayor Tom.
I guess I would like to hear from the residents that live in the area a little bit about this. I understand the conversation we're having about someone receiving a service in the community that everyone else doesn't receive, but I don't think this is the only example that exists. My understanding is that we're removing the snow because there's not enough room to store the snow on site. That's the issue here. So I guess, is there a way that we can work, that the city can work with you in some sort of a transition year or season this year on how we do that? I understand, everybody's got a different size yard, a different size terrace. Some may have a 10-foot wide terrace, some may have a 3-foot wide terrace, and so you might have 12 feet of snow on your terrace or 2 feet of snow. I haven't been down there to look at how the operation goes, but I guess my concern is that if we do discontinue this, is there an issue, or what inspired this agreement to come up 6 or 7 years ago, I guess, was the question that I have in my mind, and I'd like to know more about that.
Sure. If there's somebody here that would like to come up and speak. If the mayor would like to ask a specific question, or just want to have.
Yes. I mean, could you explain a little bit what inspired that initial agreement?
Well, the problem is it's 26 driveways. Summit Court is not that, well, it's got a cul-de-sac at the end of it. So there's no place to put the snow, even for the city. You have to put the snow at the end of in the cul-de-sac.
In the center.
Okay, so it's there. And as far as removing it, I've been there since 2003, 17 years. When the city does come in, can be a week later. It's not near when it's snowing or anything like that. It's a few days later, a week later. We plow when it's 1 inch. That's the rule. And so there could be 2 or 3 small storms before the city even has to come in, because we're plowing the street. And that's an advantage to the city. You don't have to plow the street. As far as getting, what happened is, like I said before, it's actually one year, and I can't remember it, we had the guys plowing it onto the side, and they ran out of room. The guy had to hire and get a skid steer, and actually the snow got literally so high that it started falling into the driveways, and it was within 2 feet of the eaves troughs. I mean, that was the worst example. But there just isn't much room to push the snow. And then they try to push it in, and then they're digging up the lawns, which is a problem. So it's just more expense. As far as us getting any special treatment, it's an unusual situation. We just don't have enough room for all the snow. So, and we're probably paying over $150,000 in taxes, those 28 units. So I think we are paying for the snow removal. But it worked out well this way with that agreement that was reached 6 or 7 years ago, because the city doesn't have to worry about getting ours done. It's not like I don't think people are putting in overtime. Like I said, it could be 6 days a week or longer before the snow is removed. As far as Trina's idea, a couple of years ago, 3 years ago maybe it was, we did have a contractor that let us know at the beginning of September that he was too busy, he couldn't do ours. We had to contact over 20 contractors before we got 2 bids. Most of these guys weren't interested. It was too late in the year, the contracts are signed, and our contract was signed with Bill at the beginning of September. This throws a little wrench into the whole process, because it's more costly doing it if we have to get a skid steer in there and that sort of thing. So hopefully we can put it off until next year. And as far as cost sharing, we don't have an issue with that. We'd like to help the city out if we can work something out that way.
So it sounds like there's basically an agreed upon space between the city and Bill where you're putting all the snow where the city can come and pick it up.
Right. If you don't know me, my name is Bill Klitzman. I'm the owner of J&B Services. We do the snow plowing contracted there. It's most people don't understand it. It's a unique situation up there. The driveways are so close together. There's really no room to put that snow on the side. So we rake it back, we pull it out, we plow the street. When the city goes out, I go out. So I plow the street, so the city doesn't have to worry about doing any of that up there. I asked Zach when I met with him, I said, so if you plow that down there, what are you gonna do with the cul-de-sac? Well, we have to haul that out anyway. I said, okay, yeah. I said, you can't roll that into the driveways down on the end of the cul-de-sac. Many of those driveways actually join together. And if you're gonna roll all that snow into their driveways, I would be mad as hell. I'm telling you, it's not like a normal city block where you have a driveway, down the road you have another driveway. These driveways are very close together. And like down in the end there, they're all together. So that's where the snow pile comes when we plow it down there. And Zach even admitted we have to haul some out anyway. So at some point, I mean, I guess I don't know what the feeling is. I know you'd like to cut expenses. Their problem is they don't haul it out all the time. They do it at their leisure when they have time. I don't know, the city's hauling snow anyway all the time. I mean, not that I don't mind, I can do it. It's gonna be a much more expense. And I don't have the equipment to haul it. I can load it, I'd have to hire a truck. I can load it. And maybe there's some sharing there that could go on between the city and the Congo Association. So at some point,
I think there's gonna have to be something figured out, I do.
Right.
I mean, the condo association can pay you
Yeah.
all the expense to go haul it out, or you have to buy new
I mean,
equipment, or they have to find a
even on
different.
any other court or any other court, they're not condos, I don't think, on the end, and their driveways aren't that close together as they are in that unique situation. So that's what's different about that.
Sure. But I do think maybe there isn't any reason that we can't start looking at that this year. If we do want to continue as normal, I think let's try to come up with some sort of a plan for the following year, to
Right.
start tracking expenses and say, this is how much we think that it's costing in additional services this year to provide this service to this neighborhood, I guess. That's just my thought, I guess.
And I know last year when I talked to Zach and Jenny, and I worked with the city, and I said, well, how come you didn't haul that out sooner? Because they said, well, the pile's getting so big. He said, well, we had a breakdown. I said, so you had a breakdown, so now you're blaming us because we're piling snow down there. I said, we don't control your breakdowns. I said, let me know if I could help you or something. So we get a lot of snow. Sometimes it gets piled up, but.
Yeah.
So it's just a unique situation up there that, not like your average city block or anything.
Thank you for helping explain the
Sure.
situation.
Thanks,
I
Tom.
appreciate it.
Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, if I may, one final.
Ian,
comment.
yes, please.
I want to reiterate that our previous DPW manager did not think it was beneficial to the city to continue this agreement. And I want to reiterate that every other resident in Columbus, the snow from their driveway has to be disposed of by them somewhere on their property. It does not get pushed into a street. And the reason for the large amounts of snow removal is because of all of the private driveways getting plowed into the street. This is preferential treatment, and I do not believe it's fair.
Thank you, Ian. Any other comments from council? So is council okay moving forward then in which direction? I need to hear.
I'm still in favor of, given it's a unique situation, given the previous agreements, and given if we track the expenses this year to see what a possible future cost-sharing arrangement could be between the city and the association, I am still in favor of moving forward with keeping the existing agreement.
As am I.
That's mine.
Okay. I'm okay with that as well. I think tracking the expenses will be very helpful, and to see what we're looking at for next year. So sounds like we have a consensus at least to roll with on that. So thank you very much for coming in this evening. Okay, so with number 8 finished, we are going to swing back around to number 6 on the agenda, which is review and discuss Fireman's Park rental. Thank you guys very much. Review and discuss Fireman's Park rental. We have Amy Jo here as well if we need or have questions. Hello. I've got my packet all kind of discombobulated now here. So basically the Recreation Department would like to recommend to City Council members that groups interested in renting the entire Fireman's Park for an event reserve the venue by completing the Fireman's Park space rental agreement, keeping it separate from the pavilion contract. I know we had talked about this kind of thing in a previous committee of the whole and kind of what that might look like. It says currently any group that wishes to reserve the entire park pays a rental fee of $500 plus a $1,000 deposit, and the city returns the deposit to the group reserving the space, provided that the venues are clean and free of damage. Let's see here. And an entire park rental includes the use of the pavilion, the open shelters, the scout cabin, the green space, rest haven, and the concession stand. And then inside we have the document that was created for the Fireman's Park space rental agreement. So it looks like it's updated to $1,000 from the $500 for the initial deposit for the entire park. That's really right. Sure, you can come up if you'd like to elaborate some more.
Good evening. So since I was here about a month ago, Attorney Johnson did rework up the rental agreement. So that is the new draft that he prepared. And then I also did break down to show what the resident, non-resident, nonprofit resident, and nonprofit non-resident rates would be to rent the shelters that are currently rented out. So if we had a nonprofit resident rent all of those shelters for a week, the cost would be $1,975. I did reach out to a couple other communities, and basically what they do is they lump up all of their shelters at one cost and give them a reduced fee by about $300 to $500 is pretty much what was average. I did reach out to Sun Prairie, to Forest, and Waterloo were the ones that I got replies from. So,
sorry. Alder Reed, thank you.
Not at all. I had a question looking under where it says park facility totals and then total park rental, 7 days. Like you'll say residents, $1,500 weekdays, $3,780 weekends. And then there's the two numbers added together, and I wasn't sure, is that just adding it up for a whole?
I believe that's
week?
taking
Your-
the $500, well, I don't have my glasses on, so forgive me. So the weekday totals plus the weekend totals is the final bold column on the end. Is my math off?
Well, it's odd. So are you saying for 1 week you would charge them 1 weekday plus a weekend, and that's what they would pay for the
Weekday
week?
rentals are Monday through Thursday, Friday through Sunday are weekend. So there's the 4 days during the week would be the weekday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that's what it would cost for a resident.
So
Total, if you take up all of these shelters together.
So do they, the $1,500, is that 1 weekday or all 4
All 4
weekdays?
weekdays.
Okay.
This would be total park rental for 7 days.
So
The
$500
entire
per
week.
day for the weekday. Is
That's
that
what I was
correct?
asking.
Or-
Well, not 500.
or, I'm sorry.
Right, okay, again, the glasses.
375, maybe.
$375, yes, sorry.
I can do math a little bit.
4 days.
Sometimes.
Weekday.
So, right, if you take all of the open shelters for resident on the weekday, Monday through Thursday, totals $375. So 370, well, maybe I did my math wrong. I don't know. I don't have my glasses on.
Yeah, so I think at $375 a day for 4 days, I think that might total $1,500. And then looking at resident weekend, $1,260 times the 3 weekend days, I think adds up to $3,780. So I believe the total for the entire 7 days would be $5,280 for the 7 days. But that's incorporating all the weekday rates multiplied by the days and the weekend rate multiplied by the 3 weekend days.
Thank you. Yeah, I was
Thank
just
you.
confused the way it was written. Like, wait, is that 1 day or 4 days?
Yeah, I totaled
But,
all of the park facilities on the
But
left-hand
I
column.
understand how
Okay.
you were doing the math now. Okay, thank you.
Yep. So a nonprofit resident is $1,975, and we're renting it currently for $500. So the Recreation Committee would like to recommend that we can at least bump it up to $1,000 the first year and $1,500 the following.
Say that again, Amy Jo, I'm sorry. So nonprofit resident is currently $500 for 1 day? Is that
For
a
the
weekday?
entire week.
For an entire week?
For the
Okay.
entire week, they're paying $500 with a $1,000 deposit.
Okay,
If we charged for all of the shelters as a nonprofit resident for the entire week, it would be $1,975 with the current rates that are in place. The rec committee is recommending that this year we charge $1,000, which is still a $975 savings. And the following year after that to be $1,500, which would still give them a break and allow them time to recoup the difference and plan for it. Yes, they're paying $500 for the entire week for 7 days for the pavilion and all the open shelters and stuff.
Sounds very reasonable.
anybody else have any thoughts for Amy Jo and what she's put together here for us this evening?
I just have a question that's perhaps off topic. If it is, so be it. How does if there's damage, like it comes out of the deposit, but what's the procedure or the methodology right now for documenting damage? Is that on the onus of the renter to take photographs, and then who looks at it afterwards? And because there's a huge building for the renters to say, hey, I didn't see that damage. It was there before. I mean,
Yep, that's a good question. So in the pavilion specifically, when our crew goes in on Monday, they take photo damages if there's anything that's damaged after the weekend. And when I go through and provide the keys, I kind of do a mental walkthrough. But after the event, DPW crew does go through each and all of the facilities in the open shelters and in the park and look for tire tracks and ruts and stuff like that. And then we actually fix those certain items to the cost of what it would cost us to fix it, plus the labor and wages hours is added on to that. And that's deducted from the deposit. So we have had a situation where it did exceed the $1,000 they were invoiced back. It was a perfect, they had no arguments with it at all and paid back. So.
And the only reason I asked is, I guess not related here, but I was at Fall River's open park rental in the summer, and they had a sign on, right by the door that, it was inspected and it's clean, ready for your use, and the sink was dirty, the microwave was dirty, and and so it's like it's just one of those things where when you move out of an apartment, it's the same type of thing. Like once you step foot in the door and you didn't take photos, now you're sort of.
Yep. DPW does a great job with a week rental such as this. They do have staff that works during the day and at night, and they kind of rotate, and they're always looking at the facilities to see if there's something that needs to be addressed. So,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Ian?
So if I may, quick question. So when the staff is preparing things, cleaning things, and making it ready for the next, how many hours and how much expense do we typically have? And then plus, utilities, things of that nature. How much does it actually cost us to rent the venue a day?
That's a little out of my realm. That would be a DPW with their scanners. They can run a report and tell you specifically what during that week. I'm talking 4th of July week. But otherwise, it falls under seasonal staff wages. I know that they go through the restrooms once a day to empty garbages and clean everything. But as far as that whole entire week, I would not have a clue.
So I really think that's an important aspect when we're considering prices of what we're renting things for. If we have no clue what it costs us to maintain this and keep it clean and everything else, how are we deciding on prices?
I can tell you that our revenues far exceed our expenses, if that's what you're asking.
I don't see that though. I think we need something a little more robust to be able to decide on what price it should be when we have zero idea of what the cost is. And there's far more cost than what just your budget line items show, because some of them are incurred by DPW, some of them are incurred by other areas. Your profit line isn't completely indicative of the exact profit line, and we should take all into consideration when we're considering the price we rent it for.
I understand that, but I wasn't asked to prepare that for this evening.
Thank you, Ian.
I apologize for that.
Yeah.
I just think that's an important note.
Mayor Tome?
Amy Jo, you remember, I think it was back when I was in the council, but I thought we had attempted to set up an account to kind of track the revenues that we were getting through the pavilion rentals.
Yep.
We had to replace like 4 furnaces at once or something, and it was kind of a
Correct.
last minute emergency thing. And I think that's what we were looking at back then too, was to try to make sure that we were at least getting to the break-even point between, the amount of revenue we were collecting through the rental and also, the maintenance and upkeep of the building. So I think that may vary from year to year, but I thought that account was created, but I don't know if it's still there.
It is still there, and
Okay.
I'm 90% confident that since we've raised all of these rates, we are showing a revenue increase over our expenses.
Okay,
That's the reason we've been raising them.
okay.
And I think
And-
Kyle's checking right now.
Yeah, I thought that we wanted to look at that for a reason, because I think aside from just the cleaning of the building, and it's not just the pavilion, it's any of the things
Repair
that
and
we rent out.
maintenances as well.
Well, yeah, the building is gonna need, new furnaces in 5 years again. It's all that stuff that I think you have to consider as well, so. The other question I had about the agreement, and this may be more for Attorney Johnson, but since this agreement is specifically for like the entire park, are there any insurance concerns? If this is a nonprofit organization from outside of the community that rents this, they can give us $1,000, but is there any liability requirements that we need to consider, or just would that be in addition to this that we would ask them for, just based upon what they're trying to do? If they're hosting a public event and they were selling tickets, things like that,
They are required to have $1 million insurance policy.
for every rental or every renter that would be not a private citizen but a public event would have
For
to have
public
that?
events such
Okay.
as this.
Okay.
Yep.
Is that
Similar to like the Horse Festival, they would always have their insurance, and Oktoberfest and those large events do have insurance. Provide us a certificate of insurance.
is that in here? Is that a
No.
requirement?
Believe that it is, and I'm sure that we could add that. It is in our regular pavilion contract, just not in this one.
Okay. Attorney Johnson, do you
that.
think that's something that we should include into this new agreement?
It would seem to me that it would be wise not to have separate agreements or certain language in certain places and not in other places. So, yeah, I would try to combine all of the language for the entire park into this agreement, if you can, including the insurance language.
Okay, thank you.
Kyle,
I
go
seem to
ahead.
remember that there was,
Oh.
there was language governing the pavilion, but not anyplace else there. And stretching this out to the entire facility would probably be a good idea.
Kyle, go ahead.
So just looking at the budget, 2019 actual, the pavilion expenses, which is much more of the, repair and maintenance line, that was 22,000 compared to 37,000. We would have to go back and run reports on DPW staff on the actual task codes for the pavilion, because the, between seasonal and regular labor, it's over 70,000. I can tell you in the budget, that we'll be looking at later, we're looking at $35,000 in pavilion expenses. Some of that is carried over from this year for projects we didn't get this year. So it's $35,000 next year, and the expected revenue is $27,500. So budgeting just based on rent versus repairs, not including any staff wages, we're projecting a net loss of $7,500 because of the reduced rentals. We're not renting it like normal. So, I think we can tell you staff wages and we can tell you repairs that we made, but then I think you get into bigger questions about, what is sort of incidental. It's in a park, so is some of that grass mowing related to the pavilion? Is some of the pavilion related to the, or some of the paving related to the pavilion? Is the snow plowing that might happen there related? Electric, utilities, water? So it sounds like, oh, let's just nail down the cost. It could be more complicated, but we could probably at least nail several of the highline expenses. And I don't think that what we're seeing now is that the pavilion is, used as a huge revenue generating mechanism. So, I mean, it's that balance, I think, between providing a community service and recouping the revenue that, for the pavilion primarily benefits the people renting it. And that's a balancing act that the council has to, kind of do every year with the budget.
Thank you, Kyle. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank thank you. That helps a lot, and that speaks a lot to what I was trying to say. I mean, I can understand keeping things at bare minimum for residents and nonprofits, but like non-residents and other things and public events, we really need to charge enough. We need to nail down what an average per diem is for our expense, so we know we're charging them more than what that is. It doesn't seem like we are currently. I've said it many times. I think the rental amounts need to increase, and they have. I very much appreciate that, and I think Amy Jo does a great job. I don't know if this is enough.
Kyle, you may go.
Just to follow up, I think there's some good points there. The two sides to the equation are we can raise more money to meet the expenses, or we can trim the expenses to meet the revenue. And so we might look at one or both of those solutions, but there is an upward limit of how much is reasonable to charge. If we put all the numbers together and look at depreciation of the building and things like that, it could be $5,000 a day to rent it, but no one's ever going to pay that. So I think keeping the expenses in check is just as valuable as increasing the revenue, and keeping your expenses in check is far more dependable than revenue.
I would agree. I do think that our original, what we were charging was way out of date, and I think we've made some vast improvements. But I, for the most part, I don't have any issues with the amounts that you've had, that you put together in front of us, Amy Jo. And I do think we also have to remind ourselves that this is not a typical year, obviously, for revenue, for a place like the Pavilion. So, obviously, I trust that Amy Jo and Kyle would have a close watch on as far as like revenue and things in the future. And if this needs to come back, if we need to raise rates again, if things aren't balancing out, that would be, that would come back to us in the future. So, does council have further concerns at this time? Ian, you may go.
And I still think Amy Jo knows better than any of us, of course. I still think it's on the low side for competing venues as far as what even this expresses. But instead of, if no one wants to increase it more so, maybe we can start looking into like charging for cleaning fees and other random fees to the people that are renting it. Like they can clean it and reduce our staff's hours, or we charge them X out of their deposit. Maybe there are other ways to do this, but I still think we need to make sure that we are more than recouping our costs, and we aren't. So we need to figure it out.
I'm going to let Amy Jo speak to that. And also, you did mention initially that there are rate increases built in, correct?
Correct.
So
in regards to the cleaning, so anybody who does rent the Pavilion or any of the venues, they are responsible to clean their space. The Pavilion, they're allowed up to 5 hours because that's the average time for 2 guys from DPW to clean it. Anything above those 5 hours is documented and they are charged back that time, and it's reduced off of their deposit. So, and same with any damages. That is, we give them a copy of the invoice to show them that we paid 12, we charge them 12. We document everything, and it goes back in their check with a letter from us explaining everything that we did. So anything above the 5 hours, we are deducting from their deposit return. So we do recoup that cost back.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so is everybody okay with, I guess, moving this forward? Is this something that needs actual formal approval at the next regular meeting, or is Kyle?
Would we be looking at doing this for the 2021 or like immediately?
I would ask Amy Jo what your thoughts were on that.
Well, I'm fine with either way. I have had a conversation with the group that would be renting it and made them aware that there may be possible rate increases this year, and that's why the Recreation Committee had recommended that this year we go up to 1,000, and the following year we go to 1,500 and keep it at that until we adjust our rates. So, guess that would be council's decision.
And the reason I asked is if we're going to be adopting a fee schedule later this year, this would fit in nicely with that. But if the desire was, on October 21st and forward, it wouldn't happen that quickly, but I think it makes more sense to be just a general fee schedule thing. But if there's a desire to move it up, we can move it up more quickly.
Alder Reed.
Oh, yeah, I'm feeling really comfortable with the fees presented. As far as the schedule, I wouldn't want to do any actual implementation until next year, which is coming very shortly.
2 months.
I agree. I'd also like to see it in 2021.
Mayor Tome.
Then it would make sense to maybe kind of run this along with the fee schedule adoption. That's something we should be doing annually anyway. Then if we want to talk more about individual fees for any of the shelters or anything, we can do that. I did also want to say that before we adopt this, we should probably get the addition of the insurance requirements in here too.
Sure.
So we got a little time to do that.
Okay. Thank you, Amy Jo. Okay. Number 7, we have review and discuss the RFP for the Columbus statue. Matt Schreiber's here today. I guess we have some news that we have an RFP, or well, we don't have an RFP, but maybe we're going to get one soon.
Well, you mean a proposal, or, because we have an RFP.
Or, yes, I'm sorry, the actual.
Yeah, we'd just be changing the dates on the RFP we used. Yeah, I've had some discussions with Mike Walsh, who is he is, I don't know what his official title is, but he is one of the leaders from Knights of Columbus on their interest in the statue. I talked with him on Friday. He indicated that his group, they had a committee that was dedicated to the statue, was going to meet over the weekend. We've traded phone calls early this week, and the voice message he left me today, he indicated that he was going to get something in writing to me. I don't have it as of this meeting, and that is where that's at. So, and he didn't indicate on the voice message what their plan was. So, I guess with that, then I think it's up to the council whether or not we want to kind of, I guess, continue to work with them or just reissue the RFP.
So I guess my question for you, Matt, is how confident do you feel like, or how rapidly do you feel like this is for the Knights of Columbus? Do you think that they're going to produce something this week, or?
That would be difficult to say. I mean, because I talked with them probably a few weeks ago, and it seemed like it took a few weeks before their committee could meet and come up with something. So. It'd be difficult to say. It sounded like they had their mind made up, so I would think they could produce it relatively quickly. But, I'm sure they're doing this, volunteer in their spare time. So, who knows when it will come? It'd be hard to speculate.
So, basically, we have the option to reissue the RFP, or we could just continue to wait. See Administrator Ellison hovering. You may go ahead, Kyle.
I think one option could be to work with the city attorney and try to draft up some very broad language about meeting some broad expectations of zoning and other things, and see if he can be working on that at the same time the Knights might be working on their proposal, and see if Matt is able to kind of match those two up and bring back a broad agreement with a broad plan and move it forward for approval, hopefully either at the very next meeting or the meeting following that.
That sounds excellent to me. I guess my concern is that we have this statue, in storage, and, you know, the weather's becoming, you know, weathery, and and you know, that's a concern for moving the statue this late in the year, and I don't know what the agreement's going to be, but yeah, so that's where my mind is going. I'd rather get this kind of transferred over with if it's possible, prior to when there's a foot of snow on the ground. So, any concerns from council on the request from Kyle, or the suggestion from Kyle? Nobody? Oh, Ian?
I couldn't quite hear what you were saying, Katie, so it's hard for me to be on the same page of what you were recommending or saying. Could you just tell me briefly what you said?
I just
heard everyone else.
Did you heard Kyle then?
Right.
Okay, so I was just in agreement with Kyle, and then I shared concern that, you know, as we are getting closer to winter, it's going to be difficult to have the statue transferred, essentially. So I'd like to, if we could, get this wrapped up sooner rather than later, rather than starting the process all over again, and the statue's sitting in storage longer. If we could, you know, do it as Kyle suggested, and sort of help this process along, I think that would be beneficial for everybody, including the statue.
So is there any reason why we couldn't reissue the RFP and work with them on trying to get the Knights of Columbus to figure it out, but simultaneously, if they can't, the RFP is already there, that saves us time?
I'm going to throw that one to Kyle and see if he has a...
So, you know, I don't think there'd be any reason that we couldn't. We can really do this however we want. My only fear is that if we come back in 2 weeks with a, you know, a draft agreement and a draft plan, and they both match up, but now we're 3 weeks out on the RFP, you know, we're sort of setting it up for if someone does want it during that time frame of now, you know, extending the amount of time before we have a solution, and you know, having to tell people, well, never mind, we're not really serious about the RFP anymore. But we literally could do this any way you want to do it.
But if we don't do the RFP, we could wait multiple weeks, have absolutely nothing happen with the Knights of Columbus, be midwinter, and then be talking about reissuing the RFP because nothing happened.
That is a possibility, yes.
Reed.
Alder Reed.
It's a complicated name. So I'm in agreement with Kyle's previous suggestion. I guess I'd rather wait on reissuing the RFP. I don't see that we would likely get many applicants in and anything decided before the snow falls if we tried to go that way. So I think we might be running into winter either way, and I just kind of find it less messy to first see if we have the agreement with the Knights of Columbus, and then if in 2 weeks we've heard nothing's happening, then put out a reissue.
I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads in council chambers. Okay. Sounds like that's the plan. Okay, we're going to move on then with that to number 9, review and discuss the SMA Highway 73. Standard. Administrator Ellison.
Thank you. So this is the state municipal financial agreement for a state-let project for Highway 73. Having so many state highways run through Columbus, many of you have seen things like this before. Highway 89 is one that's a current project where we have a similar arrangement. Essentially, what this is detail the costs between engineering and the actual project costs, and the time frame for when this is projected is 2025 to 2028. And this would be Highway 73 from Faith Drive to Middleton Street. So the state will cover 75% of the engineering costs and then 100% of the driving lanes, with the city picking up the 25% remaining from engineering and 100% of the parking lanes and 100% of the cost related to adjusting the municipal utilities, which was something that apparently was an issue before and is maybe not standard, but we asked for it to be addressed in there so that the stormwater from the road, if there's any variation, I think can be adjusted, and any other utilities can be adjusted. So this basically just enters us into the agreement. It does commit us to funding our share of the project, which is estimated at $215,000. Those funds, the bulk of which are going to happen when the project is in progress and actually getting ready to be pavement laid down and things like that. And we would worry about funding closer to that time and roll it into either funds on hand from an existing borrowing or plan to lump it with a larger borrowing.
I'm excited that this project is coming into sight. Where is Middleton Street? I don't know where that is. The other side of the river. Okay, so it's going all the way down from.
It's right where Meister Park.
Okay. In front of Mullins area. Okay, so all the way from Faith Drive, which is previous to Tower, all the way to. Okay. Any questions or concerns, I guess, immediately? I don't know if anybody else is, or if most of us have been through one of these. Pretty standard. Trina?
Oh, I'm also super excited. Glad to hear the amounts, and it looks very doable, and I hope it starts on the early end in 4 years.
Okay. All right. Mayor Tom?
Has there been any noticeable language changes in these SMAs recently? I mean, I know we've had quite a few, but they're usually distanced pretty farly apart, but it's pretty much the same contract we've been asked to agree to prior?
That's my understanding. This is my first one since starting here, but the city attorney reviewed it, the city engineer, and all staff at DT reviewed it. And other than asking for the change with the utility adjustments, there was really nothing asked to be changed, and looked very standard is what was reviewed.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I know we don't really have a whole lot of say in the contract language. I think we probably had to sign 3 or 4 of these for the James Street project before it actually happened. That, took a long time. So we should move this forward for approval and get on their docket and get in the list of projects. So hopefully we can get it done earlier than later.
Okay. We shall do just that. We are on number 10 here. Review and discuss Plan Commission recommendation regarding certified survey map for 1045 LLC at 210 Dick Street. We have Mr. Schreiber here with us this evening. So this was reviewed at Plan Commission. Go ahead, Matt.
So 210 Dick Street, sure everybody more commonly knows it as Pick and Save in town. Right now is under contract. The prospective buyer is proposed the CSM that you'll see in your packet, basically to create a lot between Pick and Save and Quick Trip, and then a lot that would be on the west side of the Pick and Save building. The lots, as they're shown in the CSM, will meet the zoning requirements for setbacks and things of that nature. One of the things that kind of has been a little bit of a sticking point as we're trying to work through this is Plan Commission made the recommendation. One of the things that they made as a condition of their recommendation is to see a note on the CSM that says when Lot 1 and Lot 3 of the CSM are developed, a traffic impact analysis will be completed to basically impact or to show what the impact of the new development will be to the driveway as it enters onto Dick Street. So basically, the one thing, and Brianna Cotton is here from 1045 with us tonight. One thing we've shared throughout this process is that when future development results from the CSM, that we will need to have some sort of traffic impact analysis to make sure that the private driveway that accesses these parcels are safe. And at first, the rationale behind 1045 was, I guess, I'll just say hesitant to put this on the CSM because once that node is on the CSM, then it impacts the title for those two lots. So based on their recommendation and after talking with Paul confirmed that that would in fact be the case. We talked about potentially doing something like an MOU in lieu of the note on the CSM, but as of yesterday when I talked with Brianna, they were actually okay with putting the note on the CSM. They thought that was probably the easier than doing an MOU. So for the next meeting, we will have a revised CSM that will have the note on it. Also, there are a few items on the CSM that's in your packet that will be revised, most notably page 8, the signature page includes a few Water and Light Plan Commission and Public Works Department, which don't need to sign off on this. And then on page 4, with the zoning setbacks, we also asked to show the shoreland zoning setback of 75 feet in the northwest corner of this site. Robbins Creek is adjacent to it, so by code, shoreland zoning is in effect, so we wanted that to be shown on the CSM. So I guess if there are any questions for me or for Brianna while she's here, being that this is a CSM that's a little more complex than your average CSM, we felt that and we wanted time to make sure any sort of agreement between 1045 and the city was completed before council approved it. This is why this is a two-step process rather than going straight to council. So I guess any questions for me or the applicant, I'm ready. So.
I have a question.
Okay.
Why are we going back to putting the note on the CSM?
I can answer that. So I talked it over with our attorney, and he thought that basically a note on the CSM, although it will stay on title, if it says a traffic study will occur before initial development happens, it shouldn't be a concern for any future buyers really if it's limited to that moment in time, basically.
Okay, well, it's not my map, and it's not the city's map, but it sure seems it would be a lot easier to do that as part of a development agreement or some other way so that it doesn't cloud the map for the next, forever. But it's your map, okay? I was just curious.
Just on the recommendation of our attorney, basically.
Alder Adams.
I just have a random question for the uninitiated. What is an MOU?
Memorandum of Understanding.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's the most common, it seems like it's one of the most common forms of agreements that we have with, other than, the standard developers agreement. Yeah.
Matt has like a Rolodex of abbreviations that he uses in his mind. So it's not an unfair question because.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, that's,
yep. Yeah. Any further comments or concerns, I guess, about this currently? I see a lot of you just continuing to go over everything, so. Ms. Reed.
Yeah, I'm just imagining it's going to be a little tight in the area once the other lots are filled in, so I do think the traffic study is going to be pretty important.
I can tell you that Plan Commission agreed with you when we were there. I guess, Matt, it looks like we are okay with just moving this forward to the next regular meeting.
Yep, all right, well, this will go, yeah, November 2nd is, talking to Brianna, so she knows.
Okay.
That will be at the council meeting, and
Yep.
I'll follow up with her on the details of that, I guess, after. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Let's see here. Number 11, review and discuss the 2021 budget. Kyle's favorite part of tonight's meeting.
Probably strange, but it kind of is. I like the budget.
I could tell.
So thank you. I just wanted to touch on just a few of the highlights from the memo I provided last week. That was a very long meeting, and I didn't think going into a lot of the details would be helpful. So just to touch on some of this, this last week hasn't offered a whole lot of clarity in the budget process as far as property liability insurance, or even for the Department of Revenue to finish equalizing our assessments, because I think we had that late revaluation. COVID slowed everything down, so they've been a little bit slow on the equalization, and so that's affecting things, even TID revenue and items like that. We're still kind of waiting on. We have good ideas, but we're not going to be able to zero in just yet. The rate of new construction from last year was 1.73%. And so that is one of the metrics that they increase or allow us to increase our tax levy by that amount, as well as a few other adjustments that are allowed. The current budget that's in here is 1.76 as it was presented, so it's 0.03% larger than the growth rate. And compared to last year's budget, it's a much smaller increase in dollar and percentage. So, I think the initial guidance that the city council had given me was to be, fairly cautious in developing this budget. And, I think I took that into mind when I incorporated a lot of these adjustments to the budget. The budget very closely matches our growth, which I think is good. I think there's some conversation we still need to have about, compensation adjustments and things like that. And in order to find out where we ultimately want to be consensus-wise as we go forward towards publishing our budget and having a hearing, next month, hopefully. The restraint that is in the budget, I think there's a fair question to say, well, I know there's a bug flying around. I see the shadow every once in a while. Maybe it's the buzzards. I'm not sure. But the budget, there's a fair question to say, well, was zero a better number? And the reason that I stayed with the rate of growth is because that means that if your house didn't change value, your city tax burden would change almost nothing as well. We know there's revaluation, so some people are going to be up, some people are going to be down. But if you look at several years in the future, if we have muted growth and very little new construction, what's going to happen is we're going to get trapped if we don't kind of capture that now, and we may not be able to capture that, a levy increase in the future. So, I think if we're looking at reduced revenues and increased expenses in 2 or 3 years, this is the right way to approach it right now, is to, kind of match where we're at with growth. I had some general conversation about revenue. It's a little bit up in some funds, down in others, as far as how we're spreading out the tax revenue. The general fund budget is down over the previous year's budget, but the amount of property tax that we allocated to it was increased. So it's kind of a balancing act there about which funds get the tax revenue between debt service and municipal court and all that. But one thing I think we talked about before was the municipal court they decreased their revenue coming in citations and things like that, and reduced the amount of city tax support that they receive, but they also reduced the amount of money that they send back to the city. And so that amount ended up reducing our budget by $22,000. So those are significant revenue hits, but we were able to absorb those and kind of make it work in the budget that you have. On the expense side in the general fund, we look at increases. We were able to allocate more money to storm sewer repair and maintenance, to contingency funds for some of those special one-time expenses, contract street maintenance, which is what does our paving and our crack sealing, slurry sealing, things like that. Legal codification, we know that we have some ordinances we'd like to review and update, so we increased the budget allocation for that. Election printing, we increased that because we think in future years that the historically what our numbers have been are going to be higher. So we increased that, as well as pavilion maintenance and fire equipment maintenance, because we've had kind of a trend of fire equipment. Just the expenses that we're seeing in those repair lines are outstripping the resources we have available. We did also remove already the tractor from outfitting the loader, so that's already gone. Going to the library, they actually, I believe tonight, were adopting their budget. This is the library board adopts their budget. The county funding has been changing, so they've been kind of chasing that to figure out how they can balance it all. I don't believe the city contribution has changed, and in the budget you have the increase to the library budget for the city contribution is basically less than 0.5%. So a very modest increase in the library property tax contribution that we share. The aquatic center, the property tax subsidy is about $18,000 less than this year's budget. We had a lot of big ticket maintenance items, so that gave us a lot more flexibility as well in the general fund and other funds to share that property tax. And hopefully we've got a lot of those big repairs kind of locked in now and can move forward with lower utilities and less big maintenance asks. Room tax, we just think room tax is going to be down. We know the hotel industry is really struggling. Tourism is not what it was before, and so we reduced the expected revenue there. Garbage and recycling is something I think we do need to talk about further. Based on what I'm seeing, that the plan was to, you set the rate and there's a surplus there, and then as the contract increases for the waste removal, you slowly spend down that surplus you have in fund balance, and we're basically to that point now. There's a planned deficit of about $20,000 for next year, and I think the only way to reasonably solve that is to adjust the rates because our annual contract adjusts regularly for the trash collection. And so this is kind of the opportunity to keep pace with that and correct it to match what our current obligations are. And so my plan would be that I would come back at the next meeting or one meeting in the very near future with a couple options and showing some, kind of projected rates and revenues, expenditures, as well as the potential to do maybe a staggered increase over a couple years so that we're not doing these increases all the time and we can kind of maybe do a smaller increase. But that would be my plan, is to bring that back. Cemetery is relatively flat, although they've had a reduction in some of the other revenues, I think. So they had to receive a higher level of property tax contribution this next year. Tourism, again, we're talking about reduced revenues and reduced expenditures. Municipal court, I talked about the subsidy that the city provides to the court, and that was reduced, but was really offset by the revenue the city receives from the court penalties. Let's see, the debt service fund also, we added more property tax allocation to that this year, and we're being a little bit more aggressive in covering that debt with property tax revenue. And then what that allows us to do is in the next 2 years to rely more on the funds that we have available from the project drawdown from Gateway, so that we can decrease the reliance in the property tax over the next 2 years by taking a little bit more of a hit this year and then kind of moderating it over the next 2 years. So it just gives us a little funding flexibility. And then the TID projections are in there. Everything is preliminary because everything in there is based on increment, which is based on value and assessment, and we don't have those locked in yet. Capital projects, we have $13,000 of property tax going there for this year. The big thing that we're doing is would propose buying the water and light used bucket truck in a 3-year installment. So total cost being $45,000 at $15,000 a year. This would be year 1 of 3. And then there's also a landscape trailer that would allow them to transport more lawn care equipment all at once versus taking multiple trips, either with the truck shuttling back and forth or driving some lawnmowers to whatever park they need to go to. And so that is all in there. The one thing that is not in there is the 1994 mini dump replacement, and that one was $71,000 and just didn't really fit in this budget. It is something we will have to find in the future years, but I just didn't see a reasonable way to kind of fit that in the current situation. Wastewater, they're still compiling the rate study, and that should be due this fall, actually relatively soon. And I think that they're going to be recommending a rate adjustment, the auditors. We have sort of a narrowing revenue and expenditure gap. So I think that's something you're going to see from the auditors relatively soon. And finally, there are a couple bigger expenses that are included in the wastewater operating budget, but I think we have to evaluate sort of our situation there, and there's room in the operating budget to do that if we leave it as is. But I think as we get into 2021, we have to evaluate, cash on hand and things like that, and it may be making more sense to borrow a little bit of money for that, and then that triggers some of the other elements and shared funding as well. But I think that's something that we would worry about in 2021, the actual funding as the projects come up. But just knowing that that is out there, and there may be multiple ways to do it. So that was kind of the quick memo that I had. I'm interested to know if there's been any questions or observations from the budget or anything I can clarify.
Are we supposed to address those now, or I thought you wanted like the list of in an email? So I mean, how do you want that?
An email would be great. Whenever we publish the budget, we can't have the public hearing on the budget and can't adopt it for the 15 days. So if we can come out with consensus tonight, or if you have a lot of questions, I haven't seen any questions yet. So if there are questions, certainly get them to me as soon as you can. But then we have to really probably at November 2nd, if there's not enough information tonight or no consensus tonight, November 2nd becomes an important day, because if we wait till November 16th, that'd be actually November 17th because it's a Tuesday, we're going to run out of time to adopt this pretty quickly, because you'd have to, do some approvals, and it'd be in December before we would have the public hearing and adoption. So there's some flexibility for special meetings too, potentially. But yes, this is definitely the crunch time to let me know any questions that you would have.
I have started going through it, and I thus far I've only come up with one item that I had. That's why I didn't want to send off one email. But when do you absolutely have to let us say you need this?
It's sort of up to the council. There are backwards dates, and I think if there's not consensus tonight or there's not enough questions, and I don't know if there's a desire to have a special meeting, so then you're to November 2nd, I would say that would really be my preference, is that we come out of November 2nd with a hard set of numbers to publish. And again, you can change that all the way up to the moment you adopt it. So we just have to publish something that represents the plan the day it was published, and it has to be, reasonable, and you want it to reflect what you think at the time, but you have the entire freedom at your disposal to change it any way you want or need to.
I can. I mean, we're talking line item 143, 44, 0, 0, and then triple zeros on page 1 under building permits. This year's budget was 67,000 and 2021 was 55. And I guess I thought with the RFP going out, we were hoping to gain more services, and that seemed like it should be more than or equal to this year's, if not more, next year with additional services that we'd be, asking for, and like that we were talking about prior. So, it seemed like the $12,000 reduction doesn't seem to make sense.
Yep, I see what you're saying there. So let me just do one thing here quickly. The reason that we did that, or I did that, it looks like building permits through June were about $12,000. We have a very, very limited inventory of home sites available. We won't be building 10 homes probably next year. And that's kind of your bread and butter for a lot of it. There may be some revenue from remodels, things like that, as people, fix up a home or buy a home and come in and renovate it. Also, commercially, I'm not expecting a whole lot of activity. I think we've had some good activity in existing locations. But barring any major, new factories or new commercial centers, I'm not anticipating a big increase in that revenue.
And I can understand that was honestly my first thought, like the bread and butter portion of it. It's like we don't have a lot going on, but I figured that even if you quote unquote nickel and dime it, I think we talked last time about like the furnace permit or this permit or that permit. I thought maybe those would add up enough to at least be, warranted on the budget. That's where my question came from.
Yep, and one of my philosophies too is that on expenditures, I'd like to be accommodating so that we don't run out of budget authority, and then on revenues, I'd like to be a little bit more conservative because there's no limit. They don't make you stop taking in the money. So if we're a little bit light on the budget amount, but you go over, that leads to surplus conditions and benefits the bottom line overall. So we can change it. The only problem is if we don't receive it, then we run into a problem. Where does that money come from then?
Fair enough. Thank you.
Good observation. Mayor Toll.
I had a few comments or questions, I guess, but to expand a little bit on that too, just to clarify with Paul that if we do get a new building inspection service or whatever, we still need to update our building code. So I think that Kyle needs to kind of run with the assumption is that here's the policy we have right now. That policy may change and we may increase, revenue by changing our building code, but we haven't done that yet. So I think that's, that's a conversation we can have, as we revise the building code, if we want to start getting in and as you say, nickel and diming, I guess, for it's not the bread and butter, big stuff, but we haven't done that yet. So I think he has to kind of budget, assuming that we have the same policies that we did last year.
I guess I'm a little confused in the sense of we have to adjust our building code. We use the state of Wisconsin building code. So, why would we be changing our building code to the city? So we don't have our own per se, do we? We're utilizing the city, so I guess I'm confused with what you're saying that we're going to change our building code.
We have our own building code. There may be other municipalities that don't require a permit to put a deck on their house, but we do. And how much do we charge for it? There's a million examples in the code. So there may be the need for an inspection and compliance, but how much are you charging for it? So.
Did you?
Right, things that you want to charge a building permit for is up to the city. That is part of your building code, which is in the process of being revised and should be worked on next year for sure.
Mm-hmm. soon as we get some quiet time.
So never.
Well, maybe after the budget's done, things will slow down a little bit. A few other observations or questions, I guess. Looking underneath the general budget, under recycling center, we've got an $8,000 budget for next year, had a $8,000 budget for this year. There's part-time wages. Okay, those have all been moved now to a different fund under Fund 230.
So that was something that was in place prior to me coming in the 2020 budget.
Okay.
All of that was adopted in the garbage and recycling line, and I think the intent there is to capture all the costs that we have with garbage collection and all the costs we have with running the recycling center and recouping that from the residents that use that service.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly why it was changed
I
in
feel
the
like
last.
I remember Kim bringing that to our attention and we agreed to
Yep.
to move that.
All right.
Sorry, Kyle.
No, I just wanted to kind of bring that up because I do think, as you mentioned in the notes about the need to address the garbage recycling fund, I guess the entire time I was here, we went from manual pickup to automated pickup. There was some increased cost. We had a 3-year contract with the county, I think, for services. I don't know if that's going to be coming up soon, but we were always trying to anticipate having a small amount of leftover money there for that first payment in the year, or, to make sure that we weren't running into a deficit. So I do think we need to find a way to address that this year before we approve the budget, that we shouldn't be running at a deficit for that, because that goes on your tax bill as a separate charge.
Sure.
It's not a levied fee. So the other thing I wanted to bring up was the court budget. Trying to find what fund number is that?
255.
I know you've got them all memorized already. All right, this came up last year as well. The judge is showing a salary increase this year on the line item. It's only $130, but my understanding is an elected official cannot, receive a raise until they're reelected. So what do we do about that?
So this is one of those budgets that it is prepared by the judge as kind of the chief executive of that organization. It is correct that elected officials generally can't receive an increased salary of their own approval during that time. However, what this is really doing is, I think the statute requires or says that the city council sets the salary for the judge, and in the second and subsequent years, I think you have the option to adjust that upwards but not downwards. So I think I did clarify with the judge today, and he feels that this is a good way to kind of keep pace with increases in salary. I will note that the experience as far as the revenue versus expenditures, there's two lines that impact the city directly: the tax subsidy that we give the court, and then the amount that comes to the city from court revenues. Changed significantly, and we're essentially operating at a loss in the budget they presented. So in the previous year, there was a net gain to the city in all that revenue, and now it's switched to a small loss of a few $100s. There's a couple things that I noted in there, one being the increase in salary, which amounts to $130, but again, we've now turned it into a deficit operation. Not that we're trying to get rich off it, but I think the goal always was to cover your costs by having that optional service. And then the other line that I checked on, I did have some concerns on the court special circumstances, which is 255, 511, 600, 220. Current year budget is $500. In 2019, there was no budget for it. The most recent records financially that I can check, there was no charges to that in 2019, no charges yet in 2020, and the budget was increased from 500 to 5,000, and the reason being that there's a fear of extra expenses that we maybe weren't aware of before, guardian ad litem fees that we might have to pay, and a variety of other fees that could come up. And the justification, I think, was it's better to be prepared than to be caught unprepared. But I also note that the budget landscape is much different for this fund than it was last year. So I think that could be an area that's ripe for adjustments as we try to kind of right-size it.
You hit the other account I was going to bring up as well, the special circumstances. You know, and I know that Judge Shellman was in here last year kind of presenting his budget as well, and I think the wage increase issue came up then because $8,500 is not what he was not his original wage, I don't believe, when the court was started. I understand his thinking, but I guess if I did the same thing in my budget and just increased, you know, the mayor's salary 2% every year for the person that has that job in 4 years, they would get paid more than I did. Maybe someone would want to be the mayor because they're getting 8% more than I did when I was elected. I just don't think that's the job of an elected official to decide. Personally, I think that should remain flat. And then also on the special circumstances account, if there was no charge to that $500 this year, I can't justify throwing another $4,500 into that budget when we're already $12,000, at a loss, I guess. What we really wanted to do is bring the court back to Columbus so we could have it here. That has happened, but the court is still young. But I would like to see those two items reduced back to where they were last year. I know you all don't have the budget in your hands, but those are things that I've noticed recently, and it's good to bring these items up to Kyle as early as possible, because we don't want to have this conversation the day we have to pass the budget where we have 17 different amendments or there's 17 different ideas and we have no consensus within the council on any of them. That's why I'm bringing my issues up tonight.
Alder Reed.
I guess I'm pretty flexible on the possible 125 raise. It's not significant. But on the $5,000 special fund, I'm very uncomfortable with that. And I feel like there had been some type of special fund for possible substitutes proposed when he started that had been turned down or heavily limited to a much smaller amounts. I can't remember what that amount was, but it might have been 1,000 or 2,000 that we had decided against. So 5,000 sounds pretty high.
Thanks, Trina. Any other comments for Kyle about the budget overall? Questions?
I just have a process question.
Okay.
So when, as I go through the budget and as questions do come up, would it be beneficial to, when I email Kyle, to CC everybody, so in case, no? Okay, because I was just saying in case it's duplicative for somebody else, but, okay.
Yeah, we just have to make sure we abide by the open meetings law, so when we get
Oh,
into.
because that's violate.
So if you want to email Kyle, you can email Kyle and do
Okay.
so. Kyle may choose to then come out and email everybody, but please don't reply all, so that's kind of what it just comes
Okay,
down to. But that's a fair question, thank you.
Yep, and that was one of the things we had talked about early on, is that in order to get more under, kind of conversation, if you have a question, I would try to repeat it back out to the whole group with the answer, so that everyone had that answer in case they were kind of wondering the same thing. And so that was kind of the process, so that we don't have to, have everyone doing, reply alls and violating anything.
Thank you, though. No, that's okay. It's one of those things. Okay, is everybody okay? Oh,
Again.
go ahead, Tina.
So are we probably going to have some different options to look at next time for garbage and recycling?
That would be my plan, garbage and recycling. We'll talk a little bit later tonight about some compensation. and that's going to have an impact on some of the lines as well. But yeah, those are the primary changes that I see right now, unless there's changes that the council would like to see. If there's other initiatives or anything, reductions, increases, adjustments, transfers, that's kind of, now would be the time to talk about that. And so I can get consensus as far as what you'd like to see in the, final draft version for publishing.
Mayor Tom?
Wanted to ask you about the timeline for publishing. So is this going to be on the next regular agenda to ask for the council to take action to publish the draft budget? Is that the intent?
That would be ideal. I think we talked a little bit before about, if there's consensus on the council, that could be enough to publish something that matched the council's intent. It gives you time for the discussion and things like that, and if there's any last minute adjustments. But yeah, we can certainly have some options for garbage and recycling, and we could incorporate that based on whichever option you chose. That would automatically mean that these lines get adjusted in that kind of way. And then any other compensation adjustments would be folded in by that point as well. We would not be able to have the public budget hearing on the 17th because we wouldn't be able to publish it. If you gave us approval on the 2nd, we can't get it published fast enough to hit that meeting that's 15 days away. And then you run into Thanksgiving. So we might have to, between the mayor and council president, figure out if there's a different timeline, if there's a different special meeting that we might want to have, or if we put it for final approval in the beginning of December, which is sort of, right towards the end of when our window of opportunity to do that.
Do we need to take official action at a regular council meeting to allow you to post it in the paper? I guess I don't remember what that looked like in prior years, or if it was just kind of a collective consensus from the committee of the whole.
I would have to look at that, see if the budget that's published, unless Paul knows off the top of his head. I'm not sure if the budget that you publish has to be formally approved, or if it can just be the consensus. If it does need approval, we could consider doing one of those, kind of recessed meetings. But Paul's unmuted, so he has our answer.
Okay.
I think that the public hearing that you have should be done before the budget is approved, so then you can take any input that you get at the public hearing and weigh that before you make your final approval of the budget. So a consensus of the committee of the whole to go ahead and have the public hearing should be good enough. That's how I would approach it.
Should be good enough.
The public hearing is typically done the same day as the adoption of the budget, correct, Paul?
You can do it that way, yes.
That's what we've done in the past, I believe. So I guess I'm just trying to lay out the timeline so we know that we get everything completed. If we do not want to wait to approve the budget in December and we wanted to get it done in a regular meeting on the 17th, then the publishing would have to be done before the meeting on the 2nd.
And so the only functional way to do that is that we're close enough tonight. I think we know we would have some adjustments to the garbage collection. So that would be something we would have to deal with. So unless there was a desire to meet next week, then it would be November 2nd on the Monday would be our next regular meeting. We're just, like happens every year, we're running out of year. So,
Yeah. Judging from what I'm hearing so far, I don't think that we're going to have a meeting where there's going to be 700 amendments. I think the idea of getting the draft budget out there and published for people as a public document and having the public hearing is there may be a few little tweaks we're talking about right now, as long as the council's willing to make trades within the budget so it's not overtly affecting the mill rate or how much we're levying. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day. We can amend the budget 15 times, but if we're taking $5,000 from here and putting it over here, it's just the give and take.
Right.
So I think if the council is comfortable with where we are right now, that we should provide the flexibility to Kyle to go ahead and get the notice out and publish it publish the public hearing, just so we can stay on task with everything. I'm not really looking forward to another special meeting, even though we haven't had one for the budget. You know, we just had a meeting last week. I'm not looking forward to another one next week. So that's my recommendation.
I would be good with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Ian? Okay.
Yes, I would very much agree with that. And honestly, I haven't spoken up much, but that's largely because everything the mayor brought up was every concern I had and a little bit extra. So I think we're all on the same page.
Trina, did you want to speak? I see.
Oh, I mean, I feel slightly uncomfortable not having a special meeting, but it's probably for the best. Very impressive, Kyle.
Thank you. So just one question on consensus, adjustment to the garbage and recycling line. Would the consensus be to have me project or make a proposal that I would incorporate in what we would publish that would cover the deficit at least, and then with the actual decision on which method to follow by the council at a
Whether
later
spreading
date?
it out a couple years, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because I mean, there could be, let's do one big increase and then build up a surplus so that we don't have to do it for 5 years, or it could be, let's build in small increases every other year. But if I publish it this way, there will be a deficit, which is not a problem to show a deficit because that would be the current standing. I just wasn't sure which way you'd like to show it, with the current deficit being shown, with a different adjustment being made of my choosing, or how I should do that. Because I do anticipate that there will be an adjustment. I just don't know right now enough to give you information to give me a consensus idea.
I guess I don't necessarily understand all of the repercussions of posting it without, or with a deficit, but I don't think any of us can necessarily foresee that, but I think we should post it as it is. And that way, when it shows up on an agenda that we are addressing it, that anybody who's looked over that budget can understand why.
I would
Ian?
be comfortable moving forward with the changes that Kyle would initially anticipate with incremental increases, so that we don't show the deficit immediately, and so that we do start recouping right away. I have full faith that he'll be able to put something in place that would make sense, that we would all agree to adopt on. I don't think we need to agree on a deficit and then change it later.
Mayor Tom.
I don't know what this looks like per person for garbage services, but I was probably the only member of the council that fought against going to automated carts because I was looking at a few dollars increase, over the year, and everybody seems to like this. So costs have increased since we've gone to automated carts, but I think overall with a $20,000 deficit, I think if you say, here's how we fix it this year, here's how we fix it in 2 years, I just don't think a service that's that inexpensive should be running at a deficit for even more than a year. That's my just, let's be accountable. Because it's not levied, it is the special fee that goes onto your taxes, just for that. So I'd like to see that, and then maybe something else, but I do think if you're publishing the budget, you should publish the worst case scenario, in my opinion, because anything we do above that is an improvement. I mean, we're delivering good news, to say, hey, we don't want to do it all this year. The garbage collection is separate because it's not affecting the levy, I guess. It's going to be a separate surcharge.
When you say worst case scenario, you're implying that Kyle change it from being a deficit currently. Is that?
The most expensive scenario?
To the most expensive scenario, is what you're saying, correct?
Or just leave it as is in the worst case deficit.
That's what I'm.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to leave it as is with the deficit showing.
Showing that we're going to fix it in the budget.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that because worst case scenario to some people is like, oh, you're going to have a rate increase or most expensive or whatever the case may be.
Yeah,
So-
I mean,
so-
I like to just deal with the issue and say,
Hold on,
here's the
Ian,
worst
let
case
him finish.
scenario, and here's what we do to fix it in 1 year, here's what we do to fix it in 2 years. But I think as long as we provide the worst-case scenario up front, anything we do beyond that is, more favorable to
Okay.
the residents paying the charges. That's just my 2 cents.
Yep. Ian?
So I think the worst case scenario for the city and the worst case scenario for the resident are two very different things.
I agree.
So if we show a budget where they are not getting an increase in their collection fees and we have a deficit, but then we later increase their fees, that's not showing them the worst case scenario. That's showing them the best case scenario that, hey, your fees are staying the same and we might just absorb this deficit. We should be upfront that their fees are increasing and increase them modestly to hopefully cover most of it, maybe increase it more later. But I think we should have an immediate increase so that it's not like a blind side to them later. But part of the budget should be at least some sort of increase. Otherwise, I mean, we're showing them best case scenario in their eyes, and then later giving them worst case scenario. Like, we have to kind of flip what we're thinking to how they think.
Okay, I understand. We're not speaking the same language right now. The trash collection fees are not part of the tax levy that we have to publish by requirement in the newspaper. We're talking about garbage and recycling fees, which are a separate service that's put on your property tax bill. My point, I guess, is that if we're going to put out a tax bill this year, let's put the real amount on there of how much it's going to cost next year to provide that service. Not, I guess when we're talking about showing a deficit, to me would say, no, we're not addressing that. We're going to tell them exactly what it is right now, that we're not collecting enough fees to pay for the service. I think that's irresponsible. So I think we all agree on what we're talking about. It's just understanding it's not part of the levied taxes. It's a separate entry on your property tax bill that we're talking about here. So it's not as, I'm sorry. I need a snack.
Kyle, are you gathering what I think I'm gathering here? So I guess what I thought you were initially asking is, when you publish the budget, do you want to show a deficit in there? And is that what?
Yeah, so as we publish it, the budget has all the funds, library fund, everything like that, and it will show a deficit if I publish it today with what's in your budget.
Right.
And so that was my question: is should we leave it as is, as printed, showing the deficit that we know we're going to come back and address, and try to change that, or should I go ahead before we publish, put the plan that I'm going to propose in there, which would show less of a fund balance deficit and show more revenue in that account or that fund, knowing that that hasn't been adopted and might not be the ultimate solution you choose. So anything I choose is sort of middle ground, where as I show it today, it's the kind of the standing situation as is.
Trina?
Yeah, I suppose I prefer seeing the higher number with the probable cost. I mean, this is probably one of the few things that most residents would want to peek at, because it's just something direct that they're going to be paying. It's not big, but I think it would just be a little bit of an irritation to think there's no increase. For like, what?
Just for clarification, Kyle, are you asking the council whether you show a $19,757 deficit in Fund 230?
Yes, my question is for publishing the budget, because that would have to show in the newspaper. Should I show it as is here, or should I, incorporate a plan that I would introduce at the next meeting?
I would say show the plan you would incorporate.
I'm leaning towards showing the plan you plan to incorporate. When are you thinking of publishing? Would it be around the same time? 2
If
weeks.
there's consensus tonight, on a lot of these issues, I would like to publish in the next week or so that our second meeting in November, we could consider adopting it. We could certainly have the public budget hearing then and consider adopting it. If we don't feel like we're ready or we want to go back, and once you have that public budget hearing, you're done. You've met your statutory obligation. If you want to delay final adoption to a future date in the beginning of December, I think it might be December 2nd, you would have all the options to do that. So I would probably be publishing before our next meeting to meet that 15 calendar day budget
Requirement.
kind of blackout period.
Okay. So consensus seems to be then to publish, for Kyle to publish the budget with the negative money? I'm still confused. So
No, not with the negative money, with his plan.
with his plan that he's going to come up with,
The negative money.
that may be adopted.
Can I just clarify something real quick?
Sure.
Okay, so when we do if you're gonna do the probable remedy to show the revenue in there, it's probable and it's not gonna be something that's like set in stone versus it's like a best guess, sort of. My own 2 cents on this is I would rather show the deficit right now, and then when we come back, we can hammer out something and have it set in stone at a later date. And then go from there. But that's just me.
Trina.
Yeah, I just like teasing the public with the thought of lower garbage bills when we're truly planning on raising them just a little bit.
I guess if I'm a resident and I see a deficit of $20,000, I don't think, oh geez, my garbage bill is going down. I see that the city isn't covering their expenses. But Kyle, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I probably should have led with this. This is, the deficit currently is $19,757. If the council would like to see the special charges garbage recycling fees increased by $19,757, that would be a balanced budget. We'd have to work out the mechanics on how we would get that additional money, but that decision would come potentially at the next meeting or subsequent meetings, just knowing that our goal is to at least balance the budget for next year, expenses to collections, special assessments.
Mayor Tom.
Yeah, I think there's an obligation to publish this in the newspaper. It's a legal requirement, but none of this stuff is set in stone. I mean, there can be amendments all the way up till the time we adopt this. It's really just putting this out so the public can see this is where the draft budget is, here's where we are right now, but things can definitely change. I guess my intent is to be just clear with people and just to say here, this is how much it costs for garbage and recycling pickup, and I guess I'll leave it up to Kyle the best way to present that and how we deal with it at the next meeting. And I do think at the next meeting, November 2nd, we should probably have either a regular agenda item for any possible action if we need to for the notifications or setting the public hearing or anything like that, and then also committee of the whole so we can kind of deal with more specific things within the budget too.
Yeah, so I think the mayor and I are saying mostly the same thing in a very different way. But I think it's best for us to present something showing a rate increase instead of just an outright deficit, so that our constituents expect some sort of increase. Because if we have to show them, it may not be the final exact to the penny increase, but we need to show them that there is going to be an increase. Like, I don't think we should just have a deficit and they not understand what that means. We should show that there is an increase. It may go up, it may go down by pennies. I mean, it's not like we're talking about hundreds of dollars. We're talking about, tens of cents. It's not a lot of money. We should show that, though. We shouldn't just show the deficit.
Okay. Trina, you had your light on? I have
Oh, yeah,
everybody's
no,
lights on,
just
so.
trying to do like mental math. So this is on the monthly bill?
No.
Or
No.
how often does it?
It's the tax bill at
Okay,
the
just
end of the
tax bill,
year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, probably like, might be like $15 per household, something like that.
10 or 11
Okay,
would balance.
okay. It shouldn't be too upsetting. All right, thank
Alder
you.
Adams.
So, learning a little bit more, so as long as things are still malleable and still able to throw amendments in there, I fully trust Kyle to come up with a solution or show the revenues and make a best guess at that. I see both points, but at this point, if we're going to do it anyways, at some point make it a balanced budget. Go for that.
Mayor Tome.
I think that's what I'm hearing, is that everybody wants a balanced budget and that we want to reflect what we're spending. It's just, I think the word deficit and how that appears and what that looks like is just confusing some of us. But I think that we all are headed in the exact same direction. We want to be responsible. We want people to know that there's going to have to be a slight rate increase in garbage and recycling services because we are running at a deficit right now. And traditionally in the past, we've actually had an excess in that fund to deal with that, and we haven't. So I think we're all headed in the same direction, and I'm sure Kyle's going to wow us at the next meeting and say, wow, I never imagined you were going to do that, Kyle. Thanks for more magic. So I think we all agree. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say we should go ahead and move forward we're going to flip these closed sessions here. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward to number 14, which is convene to closed session per state statute 19.85 sub 1 sub G to confer with legal counsel for the governmental body for who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is likely to become involved. I'll need a motion to move into closed session for the reasons read.
Alder Piper will make a motion to convene in closed session for the reasons said.
Adam seconds.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to convene to closed session. All those, or Pat, please take the roll.
Adams,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
Piperone,
Aye.
Reed, Ryan,
Aye.
Tome. Motion carries.